clear. The Belgrove Hotel is not part of that solution in any way.
Thank you. That ends topical questions. We now move to the next item of business, which is a Stage 3 proceedings on the Public Bodies Joint Working Scotland Bill. In dealing with the amendments, members should have the bill as amended at Stage 2, that is SP Bill 32A, the Marshall List, that is SP Bill 32AML, and the groupings, that is SP Bill 32AG. The division bell will sound and proceedings will be suspended for 5 minutes for the first division of the afternoon. The period of voting for the first division will be 30 seconds. Thereafter, we will allow a period of 1 minute for the first division after the debate. Members who wish to speak in the debate on any group of amendments should press the request to speak buttons as soon as possible after the group is called. Members should refer now to the marshalled list of amendments.
Call Group 1, Integration Schemes, same local authority and health board area. And I call Amendment 1 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary Group with Amendments 2, 3, 4, 7, 14, 19 and 63. And I ask the Cabinet Secretary to move Amendment 1 and speak to all amendments in the group, please.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. Amendments in Group 1 relate to integration schemes, the agreement between the Health Board and the local authority on local integrated arrangements. Amendments 1, 2, 3 and 4 provide clarity regarding the details of financial calculations that must be included in the integration scheme, particularly in relation to large hospitals such as the Edinburgh Royal Infirmary or Glasgow Southern General that serve the populations of more than one local authority. Amendments 7 and 19 ensure that Scottish ministers can require all necessary information is included in integration schemes and can ensure that health boards and local authorities are effectively bound into the agreements that they make within the integrated scheme. Amendment 14 ensures that ministers' approval is required of all prescribed matters in the integration scheme. This provides an important safeguard, for example, to ensure ministers have the opportunity to approve suitably robust clinical and care governance arrangements under integration. At the Stage 2 committee session on 21 January, I gave my support to Amendments 216 and 218, which were lodged by Rhoda Grant MSP and which make changes to sections 12 and 15 of the bill, ensure consultation with professionals and other groups on matters relating to transfer of staff under those sections. At the same,
Neil Findlay. Neil Findlay's microphone, please.
Can I ask on Amendment 63 if he can confirm that this will include the appropriate trade unions and consultation that will occur before the scheme would be implemented?
Cabinet Secretary.
Yeah, we've given a commitment to talk to the appropriate staff side representatives at all time. At the same time, I gave an undertaking to the committee that the same provision would be inserted into section 36 of the bill, which also makes provision for the transfer of staff. Amendment 63 inserts that provision into section 36, and I move Amendment 1 in my name.
Thank you. Call Jim Hume.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Local decision-making and accountability are crucial if we want integration of our health service that is suited to our local needs. Amendment 14 from Alec Neil seeks to take out at a quite late stage information within any integration scheme not needing to be approved by a minister. This to me means that this amendment, if passed, would mean that the minister's approval would be needed for integration schemes to be approved. Amendments 7 and 19 I have similar concerns with, as it gives ministers the provision to alter integration schemes as they see fit. COSLA has already argued that this bill is too prescriptive and there should be more flexibility at a local level. These amendments would take even more power to the centre and allow for less flexibility, perhaps. I therefore seek assurances from the Cabinet Secretary regarding local accountability for integrated schemes before supporting or not these amendments.
Cabinet Secretary, can I ask you to wind up?
Okay, Presiding Officer, I can fully assure the member, and I think we were all united in this point in the committee from all sides of the chamber, that we want to ensure that as much localism is built into the decisions, both at locality level and at the partnership level on every basis, and in relation particularly to the commissioning plan and the strategic plan for each integrated scheme, as well as the arrangements for the integrated scheme itself. And I think that's absolutely fundamental to the success of the provisions in the entire bill. Presiding officers, I don't think I need to say much more since there was only one intervention, and I'm happy to give Mr Hume the assurances that he saw it.
Thank you very much. In which case the question is that Amendment 1 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are. I now call Amendments 2, 3 and 4, all in the name of the Cabinet Secretary and all previously debated, and I ask the Cabinet Secretary to move Amendments 2 to 4 en bloc, please.
Move en bloc.
Does any member object to a single question being put on Amendments 2 to 4? Since no member seems to object, the question is then that Amendments 2, 3 and 4 are all agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are. That then brings us to Group 2, Integration Scheme, Arrangements for Complaints and Advice. And I call Amendment 95 in the name of Nanette Millen, which is grouped with Amendments 96 and 97. And I ask Nanette Millen to move Amendment 95 and speak to all amendments in the group, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Complaints represent one of the ways in which people engaged at an individual level with services have their voice heard and access their rights. Everyone who makes a complaint about health and social care support and services in Scotland has the right to be listened to and to have their concerns resolved as quickly and efficiently as possible. Most health boards and local authorities have developed clear and accessible complaints processes over a number of years to value the input of people who use support and services and ensure quality service provision that meets their needs. Listening and learning from complaints can highlight where support or services need to be changed. If integration is to produce seamless services for people using them, I agree with the Alliance that health and social care partnerships must be required to provide a clear single route into complaints processes, as this is one means of ensuring that the needs and experiences of service users can be listened to, learned from and help to drive improvement. Complaints processes are also a key accountability mechanism to enable people to access their rights in relation to health and social care. Complaints handling arrangements have the potential to be further complicated through integration, but the bill makes no reference to the complaints process. Presiding Officer, I didn't move this amendment at stage 2 and reserved my position on it after hearing the Cabinet Secretary say that a new social work complaints system is under development, which will be more accessible, allow complaints to be completed far faster and produce a coordinated response for the complainant. However, the Health and Social Care Alliance, who raised this issue with me, still believe the bill would be strengthened by including reference to ensuring effective access to a complaints system. As the development of the new system is still work in progress, I brought the amendment back for Parliament's consideration at this stage. I also support Malcolm Chisholm's amendments 96 and 97, which aim to ensure that those in leadership positions with expertise in delivering care will have a clear route to share their expertise with integration authorities. The Government supported the involvement of medical and social work leads in its policy statements on secondary legislation at stage 2 and agreed to reconsider the place of senior nurses at stage 3. And I would like to hear from the Health Secretary that nurses, as well as doctors and social workers, should be similarly involved with integration authorities. I move Amendment 95.
Many thanks. And I call Malcolm Chisholm to speak to Amendment 96 and other amendments in the group, please.
Presiding Officer, I support Nanette Milden's Amendment 95, but want to move my own amendments 96 and 97, which relate to quality, safety and standards of service, which I'm sure we all agree have to be absolutely central to the integration reforms. Moreover, I think that regulated professionals with accountability for providing high-quality care should also be central, and with structures that support them to deliver their responsibilities meaningfully. In view of that, I think it is regrettable that there is little, if anything, about care governance arrangements in the bill. There's a great deal, quite rightly, about financial arrangements and arrangements for the delegation of functions, but I do think there is a gap in relation to care governance, and I think that these fairly modest amendments, 96 and 97, do help to fill that gap. Now, the Cabinet Secretary may say that his policy statement on section 12, which clearly isn't in the bill itself, refers to the clinical director and the chief social worker being non-voting members of the integration joint board. And that is all well and good as far as it goes, although I think we need something more explicit about exactly the advice that will be sought from them and the arrangements for that. But also, and of course Nanette Milne has referred to this point, there is a glaring omission because there is no mention of the Chief Nursing Officer either in relation to the policy statement on section 12, or as far as I can see, in relation to any other policy statements or words of the bill. Now, as someone, if I'm allowed to say this, who made sure that the Chief Nursing Officer was a member of every NHS board, members will appreciate why I'm particularly concerned about this. But to be fair, the Cabinet Secretary was also concerned in his summing up when I introduced a similar but not identical amendment in committee. And if I can quote his words, he began, this is the end of his wind-up speech actually, he said, "Mr Chisholm's one point that is worthy of consideration," that was rather unworthy to say I only had 1 point, "Mr Chisholm's one point that is worthy of consideration is whether the Chief Nursing Officer in each board area should be included in the list that is in the bill. I am prepared to consider a Stage 3 amendment to that effect. I accept his point, as 43% of health service employees in Scotland are nurses and midwives." So perhaps the Health Secretary forgot his words. So very helpfully, I have put forward amendments about arrangements for seeking the advice of professional leads who are experts in the delivery of quality care. And crucially, those professional leads in these amendments include the Chief Nursing Officer. Now, many partnerships may well make arrangements that are similar to this, but I think primary legislation should set out minimum mandatory expectations. And I believe this amendment will provide a minimum guarantee that those who are able to make professional judgments on the quality of care can support innovation and development, improve decision-making and raise concerns where appropriate. Now, if by any chance I am taken by surprise and the Cabinet Secretary does not support these amendments, I would at the very least urge him to insert the words Chief Nursing Officer inside the words of the policy statement on section 12, because by his own admission at committee, that was a glaring omission. But obviously I would prefer if he actually supported the amendments. I move them.
Thank you. Richard Simpson.
Yes, I want to support all three of these amendments. The question of complaint systems is really very important. The Cabinet Secretary will remember that we had an extensive debate in relation to the Patient Rights Act about introducing a new system of the 4 Cs, which were compliments, comments, concerns and complaints, as a modified system based on what had been introduced in the State Hospital. There is a danger that without Nanette Milne's amendment, that we'll end up with an increased landscape and an increased complexity rather than reduced complexity. And therefore, I think that amendment, which means that at least we'll have a single point of entry to the services for that complaint system, is an initial first step. Because I think in the longer term, we must simplify the system overall, because even with this amendment, there are still multiple points of entry to complaints. You have to decide if you're a patient, someone receiving social care, someone receiving social work assessment. That's just 3 examples of different systems that exist at the present time. I also want to support Malcolm Chisholm's amendment, particularly in respect of nursing. This bill, if nothing else, is about the integration of community services. And in the community services, in a modern community service, it is very, very often the nurses who are in the leadership position. So for them not to be included in the persons mentioned in 3A, in line 27, I think is something that needs to be rectified. So I very much support that as well.
Many thanks. Cabinet Secretary.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. Can I deal first of all with the complaint system? And I recognise that the current system for social work complaints is no longer up to date or adequate. That's why we're working to develop a new system that will be more accessible, better coordinated and quicker. I will use existing powers in relation to secondary legislation to meet these changes, which is why we don't need any additional primary legislation. I already have the powers I need to make the necessary changes, and I'm confident when we make those changes that Nanette Milne and indeed others will realise that the intention of her amendment will be achieved under my existing powers. This bill, I don't believe, is the appropriate legislative vehicle to make changes to the complaints system, especially when we've not consulted on them as part of the bill. And obviously, when I do come forward with the final set of proposals, we will consult with people before we finally implement. I agree with the spirit of Amendments 96 and 97 lodged by Malcolm Chisholm, as it is clearly fundamental that health boards and local authorities seek advice from health and social care professionals on all aspects of integrated service planning and delivery. I do not, however, agree with how this amendment seeks to achieve this. So again, we're on the same page. The only issue is how best to achieve our shared objective. My first concern, as I described it during the Stage 2 committee sessions, is that I do not think it's appropriate to name some health and social care professionals on the face of the bill and not name others, so that you make a distinction between those named and those not named. I think it's equally important, for example, that the views of the Director of Public Health, GP representatives and allied health professionals, amongst others, are sought and considered. I will expect integration schemes to describe the engagement process for all professionals, not just a few, as suggested by Malcolm Chisholm. Furthermore, these amendments do not include non-statutory partners in health and social care. To my mind, users and carers have a lead role in describing what a quality service should be, and the third sector is a significant provider of care services. Integration... Yes, of course.
Malcolm Chisholm.
I hear what the Cabinet Secretary says, but the fact of the matter is that the policy statement on Section 12 specifically does name the clinical director, who will be a doctor, and the Chief Social Work Officer. So there is no logic whatsoever in not also naming the Chief Nursing Officer, at the very least, in policy statement in relation to Section 12.
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, the logic is that a senior medic and a senior social worker in the role as the Chief Social Work Officer, and that had to be made clear in this bill, particularly in relation to the responsibilities of the Chief Social Work Officer, that they had a role in terms of attendance at the partnership boards. So there was a distinction because it refers very specifically to the statutory function of these two positions. Integration schemes will be required to provide detail on the arrangements for engaging with these groups of shareholders as well. And I am prepared to specify, for example, Chief Nursing Officer in relation to the guidance that we will be putting out after further consultation. As I say, if we start to name everybody in this bill, it will become a very long bill and we'll still leave people out who should be named. So it is far better to do this in terms of the regulations and the guidance rather than on the face of the bill. Amendments 7 and 19 strengthen regulation-making powers with regard to the content and effect of the integration scheme, and I will ensure that we set out appropriate processes for engagement of professionals and also non-statutory stakeholders. So we're on the same page, we're trying to achieve exactly the same objective, but it's better not to do these particular measures on the face of the bill, but rather in guidance and regulation and, where appropriate, secondary legislation. And on that basis, I would invite Nanette Milne to withdraw Amendment 95 and Malcolm Chisholm to withdraw Amendments 96 and 97. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now invite Nanette Milne to wind up and indicate if you intend to press or seek to withdraw.
Thank you. This is beginning to sound like a bit of a rerun of the Health Committee meeting at Stage 2 when we were all on the same page, but I clearly hear what the Cabinet Secretary is saying about the complaint system, and he said it, as I know, at the committee as well. However, this is still work in progress. We don't yet know what the new system will be, and at this stage I will be pressing with my amendment. Thank you.
Many thanks. The question then is that Amendment 925 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Parliament is not agreed, there will be a division. As this is the first division of this stage, the Parliament is suspended for 5 minutes, after which there will be a 30-second vote. Order. We will now proceed with the division on Amendment 95. This is the 32nd division and members should cast their votes now, please. Order. The result of the vote on amendment number 95 in the name of Nanette Milne is yes 49, no 61. There were no abstentions. The amendment is therefore not agreed. I now call amendment 96 in the name of Malcolm Chisholm, which has already been debated with amendment 95, and I ask Malcolm Chisholm if he will move or not move.
Moved.
The member has moved. The question therefore is that amendment 96 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We are not agreed. There will be a division. This will be a 32nd division. Please vote now. The result of the vote on amendment number 96 in the name of Malcolm Chisholm is yes 53, no 61. There were no abstentions. The amendment is therefore not agreed to. I now call amendment 97 in the name of Malcolm Chisholm, which has already been debated with amendment 95, and I ask Malcolm Chisholm to move or not move.
Not moved.
The member has moved. Therefore, the member has not moved. That brings us then to Group 3. Local authorities' functions which may be delegated, and I call Amendment 5 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, grouped with Amendments 6, 98, 99, 91, 92, 93 and 94. And I ask the Cabinet Secretary to move Amendment 5 and speak to all amendments in the group, please.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. At introduction, the bill permitted any local authority function to be included in the integrated arrangement. I amended the bill at stage 2 to set out in the schedule to the bill the list of local authority functions which can be delegated under an integration scheme. Amendments 5, 6, 94, 98 and 99 make minor adjustments to section 1 and the schedule to include functions conferred by virtue of an enactment, as well as functions conferred directly by an enactment. Amendments 91, 92 and 93 make minor additions to the list of enactments set out in the schedule to the bill which confer functions which may be delegated. I move Amendment 5 in my name.
Thank you, Cabinet Secretary. I don't have any other members indicating that they wish to speak. Do you wish to wind up? Thank you. The question then is that Amendment 5 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are. I therefore call Amendments 6, 98, 99 and 7, all in the name of the Cabinet Secretary and all previously debated, and I ask the Cabinet Secretary to move these amendments en bloc, please.
Move en bloc.
Does any member object to a single question being put on these amendments? Since no member objects, the question is that Amendments 6, 98, 99 and 7 are agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are. That then takes us to Group 4, minor and technical amendments, and I call Amendment 8 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, grouped with other amendments as shown in the groupings, and I ask the Cabinet Secretary to move Amendment 8 and speak to all amendments in the group, please.
Deputy Presiding Officer, amendments in this group are minor and technical amendments to ensure the bill is clear and ordered appropriately. I move Amendment 8.
I have no other members who wish to speak. Do I presume, Cabinet Secretary, you do not wish to wind up?
No, thanks.
The question then is that Amendment 8 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are. That brings us to Group 5, Principles. I call Amendment 9 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, which is grouped with other amendments as shown in the groupings, and I ask the Cabinet Secretary to move Amendment 9 and speak to all amendments in the group, please.
Presiding Officer, the integration planning and delivery principles have been an area of key focus at Stage 2, and rightly so, given that they provide the framework and ethos under which integration will be delivered. The principles provide for a person-centred focus, putting the service user at the heart of service planning and delivery, and reflect measures of successful integration. The bill aims to improve service delivery by integrating health and social care services for all users of these services. The principles must therefore apply to the whole population: adults, children, disabled people, people with dementia or learning difficulties. Indeed, many service users have multiple complex needs. I am very sympathetic to amendments brought forward by members in this group. However, I cannot support them. I have taken many of the points raised at Stage 1 and Stage 2 into consideration and have brought forward a number of amendments at Stage 2 to further strengthen the integration principles. Amendments 10 and 48 in my name ensure that the rights of service users are taken into account and further embed a rights-based approach to the bill. Nanette Milne's amendments 101 and 109 are not necessary. Amendments 10 and 48 in my name, together with the requirement to consider the particular needs of different service users, already take into account the abilities and wishes of service users. Health boards and local authorities are already subject to statutory requirements and guidance in relation to assessment. However, given the importance of considering individuals' needs within an integrated approach to care, I intend to provide statutory guidance on this matter. The guidance will provide further support to health boards and local authorities to ensure that their understanding of need is appropriate. In considering the use of the term independent living in Amendments 100 and 108 in the name of Malcolm Chisholm, as I noted at Stage 2, I accept and agree that it is important to ensure these principles and ideals are reflected in standards of planning, delivery and design of services. Terms such as independent living are, by their very nature, potentially subject to changing or differing interpretation. The integration principles must equally apply to all users of health and social care services covered by the bill, not only vulnerable or disabled people. We will continue to embed the Scottish Government's vision statement on independent living for disabled people in all the work that we do, including as we take forward integration. In terms of including the need for access to independent advocacy services, this has not been consulted upon with stakeholders, it has not been costed, and it is not clear how or by whom these services would be delivered. It is not clear either whether there is capacity within advocacy services within Scotland at the present time to service such a commitment. In terms of individual choice, it is important to distinguish between the requirements placed on local authorities by the Social Care Self-Directed Support Scotland Act 2013 to provide choice and control over social care services, and the purpose of this bill, which is to bring together the responsibilities, accountability, delivery and planning for health and social care services. Choice and control cannot equally apply to all service users in all circumstances and to all health and social care services under the bill. The integration planning and delivery principles, importantly, do require the Health Board, Local Authority and Integration Authority to consider the needs of service users and to plan for integration and deliver services from the perspective of the service user. I therefore cannot support Amendments 104 and 112 in the name of Malcolm Chisholm. It is important that the care people receive is delivered in a person-centred way. That is, they should receive the right care at the right time in the right place. This will naturally be different for different individuals and in different circumstances. We cannot take a simplistic one-size-fits-all approach. However, good professional practice will, of course, include appropriate recording of hours to meet the needs of individuals. We also cannot recognise one set of individuals who provide care and support over any other group, be they paid staff in the employment of health boards, local authorities, third sector organisations, independent contractors or unpaid carers. It is, of course, important that everyone who makes a contribution to good quality care is recognised for doing so. Before I close, I would like to assure the Chamber that I continue to meet many of the stakeholders who have expressed support for these amendments. I am fully committed to continuing this dialogue and to looking at ways we can build these considerations into regulations and guidance, but the amendments offered today do not achieve the aims that they seek to achieve. I move Amendment 9 in my name and ask Malcolm Chisholm not to move Amendments 100, 103, 104, 105, 108, 111, 112 and 113. Nanette Milne not to move Amendments 101, 102, 109, 1110 and Neil Findlay to not move Amendments 49 and 89 in their names.
Thank you very much. Before I call the next 5 members who wish to speak in this group, could I ask the Chamber to show courtesy both to the Cabinet Secretary and all members who are participating in the debate and take their conversations outside the Chamber. Thank you. Malcolm Chisholm to speak to Amendment 100 and other amendments in the group, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I must start with an apology to you and the Cabinet Secretary. I think I heard most of your speech, but there was a very good reason why I had to leave the Chamber after my previous speech, because I handed into the official report my notes for this speech, so which is not an error which I recommend to people. Now, the particular reason why I needed my notes back was that on my notes is a definition of independent living, which I'm told has been accepted by the Cabinet Secretary, COSLA, NHS Scotland, the Scottish Independent Living Coalition, and it's been accepted in particular in a document called Our Shared Vision for Independent Living, because members will remember that a few moments ago I did hear this. Alec Neil said there was no clear, indisputable definition. Now, of course, if I did want to be unkind, which I never am, I could say that we spent a whole afternoon passing amendments about sustainable economic growth in a certain bill a few weeks ago. When it was generally accepted, there was no generally accepted definition of that, but that didn't stop the Scottish Government. So I think there actually is a more accepted definition of independent living, which I should read out. I think we've got time for me to read it out. Disabled people of all ages having the same freedom, choice, dignity and control, and choice and control are going to come up later as well, as other citizens at home, at work and in the community. It does not mean living by yourself or fending for yourself. It means rights to practical assistance and support to participate in society and live an ordinary life. So I think there is an accepted definition of independent living, and I think it would be helpful if it was in the bill. There's certainly a great demand for that from many groups outside. I think we all have. I think at committee it may have been suggested that it's only certain people that have independent living. We all have it, but obviously disabled people have had to fight for that, and they in particular would welcome its inclusion in the bill. And the same goes when it comes to the issue of the word rights. Now, again, I have to welcome the Cabinet Secretary's change of heart, because when I moved a similar amendment at committee, he argued that it was not necessary to have words about rights in the bill, because clearly all Scottish Parliament legislation has to be consistent with the European Convention on Human Rights, and I think he said it wasn't necessary to add particular wording about rights. But in fact, there is a particular rights-based approach to health and social care which was recognised by the government in the Self-Directed Support Act, and so at committee we were saying, well, why don't we have it in this Act as well? So the Cabinet Secretary, we should commend his movement on this, so we do now have words about respecting the rights of service users. And I'm just seeking to build on that in two particular ways by echoing words from the Self-Directed Support Act, which refer to the right to dignity of service users and also to service users' right to participate in the life of the community in which the service user lives. So they're just slight changes to words that the Cabinet Secretary has put in the bill in order to echo the rights-based language of the Self-Directed Support Act. So having moved on rights, having taken the first step on rights, I hope he'll take the second step and accept those amendments. Now, the third set of amendments is about choice and control. Words I've already quoted, so words which have already met with the Cabinet Secretary's approval in that context. And the other key words in that amendment are participation in decisions. Now, I think we all accept that this is absolutely crucial to a person-centred approach to health and to social care. And one of the big changes that's been taking place gradually over the last few years from the old paternalistic models of health and social care to ones in which, whether it's patients or service users or whoever, have the right to participate. So I hope that's generally accepted. But I think the words choice and control are also important. Who is capable or incapable of exercising choice and control is a long-standing, well-researched and well-rehearsed debate. But what's important here is that it's vital not to roll back the years of progress in extending opportunities for choice and control. With the right support, there is plenty of evidence that even people with profound difficulties and impairments, and indeed certainly frail older people, can exercise choice in their lives, again, with the right support. So I do reject what the Cabinet Secretary said at committee and what he repeated today about certain people really not being appropriate for such a category. So I support, obviously I support all my own amendments. I also support the other amendments in the group, including that from, well, obviously including that from Neil Findlay, which I'm sure he'll speak to in a moment, but also the one from Nanette Milne. There were issues in the committee about advocacy, but I certainly accept the wording that she has put forward about taking account of the need for access to independent advocacy.
Thank you. Nanette Milne to speak to Amendment 101 and other amendments in the group, please.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. This group of amendments builds on a series of amendments at Stage 2, which more clearly placed human rights principles at the heart of integration planning and delivery principles, giving respect to a person's dignity and participation in the community, replacing the term recipients of care with service users, and amending the principles to ensure that service users, unpaid carers and those involved in health and social care from across the sectors are engaged in the planning and local delivery of services. My amendments 101 and 109, by making explicit reference to people's aspirations and abilities as well as needs, and Malcolm Chisholm's amendments 104 and 112, which refer to choice and control, more strongly reflect human rights, and particularly a more person-centred approach, and strengthen amendments 10 and 48 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, which I also support. Also, further embedding human rights in the legislation are Malcolm Chisholm's Amendment 108, referring to independent living, 111, promoting the right to dignity of service users, and 113, regarding the right of service users to participate in the life of the community in which they live. My own amendments 102 and 110 would ensure that consideration is given to support service users through access to independent advocacy. An independent advocate can help people to express their own needs and make informed decisions, speaking on behalf of people who are unable to speak for themselves or who choose not to do so. Ensuring that independent advocacy is included for those who wish to access it would support the aims and principles of the bill and help to ensure the voice of individuals and communities are at the heart of the planning, design, delivery and review of services. I await Neil Findlay's contribution on his Amendment 49 before deciding whether or not to support it, and I move Amendment 101 in my name.
Many thanks. I call Neil Findlay to speak to Amendment 49 and other amendments in the group, please.
Thanks, Presiding Officer. Amendment 49 will address one of the key fundamental problems with the current social care system, and that is the issue of poverty pay. Social care in Scotland is rapidly becoming a minimum wage sector. Councils, hamstrung by underfunding and cuts to budgets, without the inability to set their own taxes, are forced into externalising services and cutting the cost of contracts to third sector and other organisations. Voluntary groups are telling us that they simply cannot and will not provide the services needed because they cannot fulfil contracts at current prices. Within councils are trying to make savings, but you can only cut from the same cloth so often. A number of voluntary organisations are telling us they want out of the care sector altogether, a move not driven by the needs of their clients, but because of their need to survive. And many want to speak out on this issue, but won't for fear of what will happen to their funding, both locally and nationally. Meanwhile, over 40,000 home care workers are trying to exist on poverty pay, 40,000 below the living wage. The esteem in which the job is held is at an all-time low, and staff often don't get paid travelling time. Some have to pay for their own phone calls back to their base, and training budgets have been slashed. In a society where we pay footballers £300,000 a week, young care staff are paid as little as £5.13 an hour. And this is to look after our mums and dads, our grannies and granddads and elderly friends and relatives. This is a national embarrassment and a scandal that has to be brought to an end. We need staff to be rewarded in a way that protects the services that they provide, and that should be by introducing a living wage. If the Scottish Government doesn't implement the living wage for care staff across the country and fund local government appropriately to do so, then Labour will. We introduce the minimum wage and we will introduce the living wage. If the living wage is good enough for NHS staff, then it's good enough for the staff supporting the very same patients and clients when they return back to the community. So I ask you to support Amendment 49. On Amendment 89, the amendment seeks to end the culture of strict time-limited care visits. Last week, Unison released its Time to Care survey, and in it they reported 56% of their members who were questioned were on time-limited care visits, with many members complaining bitterly about the pressures they are under and the impact on those they care for. I hope the Cabinet Secretary has read that shocking report, and if he hasn't, I'll give him a copy. In its briefing on this amendment, the Coalition of Care Support Providers reports that their members have a policy of refusing to tender for work that is on a 15-minute schedule because of, and I quote, "It does not align with their approach to care and support. Others believe that they would not be able to provide an acceptable quality of service within this timeframe, especially to people with complex needs." And others have again based their decision on their experience of providing 30-minute visits, with one member commenting that, in their view, 15 minutes would be too short even for so-called welfare visits. And they go on to say that 15-minute visits are increasingly a feature of care-at-home framework contracts. These comments come directly from the front line, and we should listen to these concerns. Age Scotland, in a recent report, highlighted care visits are now down to as little as 7 minutes. Now, I know the Cabinet Secretary is a rather sprightly, fit young man, but I'm sure that even for such an athlete as he, washing, dressing, cooking, feeding and toileting would be a challenge in 15 minutes, never mind 7. Well, can I urge people to think of the challenges that are faced by care workers trying to help people who have mobility problems or an illness such as cancer or dementia. Time and task visits run totally contrary to a person-centred approach. They run contrary to a human rights-based approach and contrary to common decency, dignity and respect. If personalisation and human rights mean anything, then we have to change this conveyor belt care that is an affront to people's dignity, an affront to the staff who want to provide a good service, but who have some of the worst working conditions of any group of people working in the health and social care sector. The duration of a care visit must reflect the needs of the client. That is what this amendment seeks to ensure. And I hope the Cabinet Secretary accepts this important amendment, as this issue and poverty pay are two of the most important elements undermining the quality of care being provided in Scotland, and they are largely ignored in this bill.
Thank you. Gill Patterson.
Thanks, Presiding Officer. As a member of the Health and Sports Committee, I have been pleased to work on this bill through committee evidence sessions and stages 1 and 2. During this time, the guiding principle was for the bill to be person-centred, to ensure that the service users be at the very heart of service planning and delivery. With people in Scotland living longer, there is a huge challenge ahead for our health service as the number of people with complex illnesses increase. Therefore, to meet these challenges, there must be a joined-up approach, and that is why it is fundamentally important and vital to integrate both health and care services, which is indeed person-centred. If we do not do this, then there is a danger that those who need support at such a vital time could be missed or passed from pillar to post without receiving the best service. During the Stage 2 proceedings, there were a number of amendments put forward by members, and after lengthy discussions, we felt that they would not strengthen the bill and indeed rejected them. At this stage, I am still of that opinion, which is why I urge members to vote against the non-government amendments before you.
Thank you. Jim Hume.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Both Nanette Milne's and Malcolm Chisholm's amendments 100 and 101 are a useful and important addition to this bill. They focus us all and the legislation on the fact that person-centred care is what we are all about achieving. And for once, I disagree with the Cabinet Secretary. Read the term independent living and concur with Malcolm Chisholm, of course, and add to the organisations that already recognise independent living as a term. The United Nations itself, in their Rights of Persons with Disabilities, refers to independent living, and we couldn't really argue with the United Nations. And in fact, to quote from it, it's recognising the importance for persons with disabilities of their individual autonomy and independence, including the freedom to make their own choices. So that's a strength in Malcolm Chisholm's amendment. And Annette Milne's Amendment 100 also recognises that person-centred care is something that is a desired outcome of this bill. We know that beds are scarcer now and that most wish to be treated at home. We shall support the amendments of Malcolm Chisholm and Annette Milne, and in doing so put into legislation person-centred care as the focus of delivery with independent living.
Thank you very much. Can I check with Chick Brodie? Your request to speak was on, then it was off and then it was on. Do you wish to contribute? No. Thank you. I then call the Cabinet Secretary to wind up, please.
Presiding Officer, I'll deal as much as I can, as comprehensively as I can with the points being raised. First of all, in relation to Annette Milne's amendments, I fully accept the intention of these amendments, and I think they are reflected already in the principles outlined at the very start of the bill. And I think to add to those at this stage in the bill would be not very helpful, and a lot of the detail in her amendment would again be more appropriately covered in regulations and in guidance. Secondly, in terms of independent living, let me just say, with regards to independent living, the principles must apply equally and appropriately to all users of health and social care services under the bill, not just to vulnerable or disabled service users, such as children, able-bodied. It has to apply to children, able-bodied adults who suffer injury or disease, older people in residential homes, and adult prisoners. Whilst the Scottish Government and COSLA, as Malcolm Chisholm said, have rightly signed up to an independent living vision statement, it's an entirely different matter to set out in primary legislation a static definition. It is worth noting that the UNCRD describes living independently. Therefore, there are already different interpretations and definitions of independent living. Furthermore, the National Health and Wellbeing outcomes that will be prescribed in secondary legislation propose to have an outcome on independent living. Secondary legislation provides for more flexibility when legislating matters that may change over time. I don't at all have an issue about the principle of what we're trying to achieve. We're all on the same page. We're all trying to achieve the same objective. But when you build in certain definitions into law, it can actually work against the people you're trying to help and end up in a legalistic fight when, in fact, we want to get on with the job of ensuring these services are properly designed, planned and delivered. Finally, in relation to Neil Finlay's amendments, actually his amendment doesn't do what he said he wanted to do in his speech. And can I say to him, one of the reasons why, not the only reason, because I support the living wage, and had the European Union Lisbon Treaty allowed us to do so, the Procurement Reform Bill would have incorporated a provision that every public contract and the providers under every public contract would have had to have the living wage before they could be even considered for that tender. But when we took advice, we were advised strongly by the European Union that that was totally unacceptable under the terms and conditions of the Lisbon Treaty. And therefore, we have to look at other ways of ensuring a good quality standard of living for people who are working in the social care sector. I fully accept the need to do more, of course.
Neil Finlay.
Senior figures in the European Commission, including the President, offer the Scottish Government a lot of advice, some of which they want to ignore. But is it a choice as to which advice they listen to?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, we listen to the informed advice from officials who are properly informed in the law, which not all of them are, even at a very senior level. And therefore, can I say that that was the situation, and that bill, the Procurement Reform Bill, could have been called in if we had included that provision in it. I do accept the general principle that we have to do more in relation to people working in the social care sector. I absolutely accept that, and indeed we are in discussion with the sector itself about how best to do that. I won't take another one. I should gently just point out to Neil Findlay, of course, that the situation would have been helped had the minimum wage in recent times been raised in line with inflation, which of course hadn't been the case. And I fail to understand, therefore, why he is voting for a union where the minimum wage has been decreased in real terms value, instead of voting yes when we've got a commitment to raise the minimum wage in line with inflation.
The question is that Amendment 9 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are. I now call Amendment 100 in the name of Malcolm Chisholm, which has already been debated with Amendment 9, and I ask Malcolm Chisholm to move or not move.
Move.
The member has moved. The question then is that Amendment 100 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division. This is a 1 minute division. Please vote now. The result of the vote on amendment number 100 in the name of Malcolm Chisholm is yes 54, no 62. There were no abstentions. The amendment is therefore not agreed to. I now call amendment 101 in the name of Nanette Millen, which has already been debated with amendment 9, and I ask Nanette Millen to move or not to move.
Move.
The member has moved. Therefore, the question is that amendment 101 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. Parliament is not agreed. There will be a 30-second division. Please vote now. The result of the vote on Amendment 101 in the name of Nanette Millen is yes 54, no 62. There were no abstentions. The amendment is therefore not agreed to. I now call Amendment 102 in the name of Nanette Millen, which has already been debated with Amendment 9, and I ask Nanette Millen to move or not move.
Move.
The member has moved. The question then is that Amendment 102 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division. This will be a 30-second division. Please vote now. The result of the vote on Amendment 102 in the name of Nanette Millen is yes 52, no 64. There were no abstentions. The amendment is therefore not agreed to. I now call Amendment 10 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, which has already been debated with Amendment 9, and I ask the Cabinet Secretary to move formally.
Move formally.
Many thanks. The question is that Amendment 10 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are. I call Amendment 103 in the name of Malcolm Chisholm, which has already been debated with Amendment 9, and I ask Malcolm Chisholm to move or not move.
Move.
The member has moved. The question then is that Amendment 103 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Parliament is not agreed. There will be a 30-second division. Please vote now. The result of the vote on Amendment 103 in the name of Malcolm Chisholm is yes 53, no 61. There were no abstentions. The amendment is therefore not agreed to. I now call Amendment 10 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary. Amendment 104 in the name of Malcolm Chisholm, which has already been debated with Amendment 9, and I ask Malcolm Chisholm to move or not move.
Move.
The member has moved. The question then is that Amendment 104 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Parliament is not agreed. There will be a 30-second division. Please vote now. Order. The result of the vote on Amendment number 104 in the name of Malcolm Chisholm is yes 54, no 62. There were no abstentions. The amendment is therefore not agreed to. I now call Amendment 105 in the name of Malcolm Chisholm, already debated with Amendment 9, and I ask Malcolm Chisholm to move or not move.
Move.
The member has moved. The question therefore is that Amendment 105 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Parliament is not agreed. This will be a 30-second division. Please vote now. Order. The result of the vote on Amendment number 105 in the name of Malcolm Chisholm is yes 54, no 62. There were no abstentions. The amendment is therefore not agreed to. Could I ask the Chamber for some order, please, when results are being called? That then brings us to Group 6, National Health and Wellbeing Outcomes, and I call Amendment 11 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, group with Amendments 12, 13, 119 and 87, and I ask the Cabinet Secretary to move Amendment 11 and speak to all amendments in the group, please.
Deputy Presiding Officer, these amendments relate to the provisions in the bill that enable the Scottish Ministers to prescribe national outcomes for health and well-being. Amendments 11, 12 and 87 clarify what the national outcomes for health and well-being as defined by this bill are and where they are to be found for readers of the NHS Scotland 1978 Act. Amendment 13 adds housing stakeholders to the list of persons whom the Scottish Ministers must consult before prescribing national outcomes for health and well-being. I am of the view that it is particularly important to ensure a strong role for housing and integration. After all, it is our policy commitment and our vision that we should enable people to be cared for at home or in another homely setting for as long as possible. This amendment provides that assurance. Amendment 119 is a minor amendment and it is consequential to Amendments 11, 12 and 18. And I move Amendment 11 in my name.
Many thanks. I call Rhoda Grant.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I just want to welcome Amendment 13 and the involvement of housing providers. Housing providers providing sheltered and supported care have a lot to contribute to this and actually allow people to stay at home more independently for longer. I think it's important that they're involved, and I welcome that amendment.
Cabinet Secretary, do you wish to respond?
No, thank you.
Thank you. The question then is that Amendment 11 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are. I therefore call Amendments 12, 13 and 14, all in the name of the Cabinet Secretary and all previously debated. And I ask the Cabinet Secretary to move Amendments 12 to 14 en bloc.
Move en bloc.
Thank you. Does any member object to a single question being put on Amendments 12 to 14? Order. I'm going to call that again. Does any member object to a single question being put on Amendments 12 to 14? No. The question then is that Amendments 12, 13 and 14 are agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are. That brings us to Group 7, Integration Joint Boards, Staff and Finance, etc. And I call Amendment 15 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, which is grouped with Amendments 16, 17 and 18. And I ask the Cabinet Secretary to move Amendment 15 and speak to all amendments in the group, please.
Deputy Presiding Officer, the amendments in this group relate to staff and finance matters of the Integration Joint Board. Amendment 15 provides clarity with respect to the order-making power in Section 11 to enable Integration Joint Boards to employ staff other than a Chief Officer. Employ is used rather than appoint to make it clear that what is envisaged under such circumstances is a relationship of employment. Amendment 16 removes Section 11(3) as it is not considered necessary. Amendments 17 and 18 reflect the position that the Chief Officer is accountable for all matters relating to the Integration Joint Board, but require the Integration Joint Board to appoint an officer for matters of financial administration. The effect of these amendments is to allow for the Integration Joint Board to place financial accountability in the hands of a finance professional if the Board agrees that it is appropriate, and will strengthen the financial governance of the Integration Joint Board. Such an arrangement will not be obligatory. The Chief Officer can be the accountable officer for all matters, including financial administration, but it allows for local flexibility. I therefore move Amendment 15 in my name.
Thank you, Cabinet Secretary. No other member has indicated that they wish to speak. Do you wish to add anything further? In which case the question is that Amendment 15 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are. I therefore call Amendments 16, 17, 18, 19, 106, 20 and 21, all in the name of the Cabinet Secretary and all previously debated. Can I ask the Cabinet Secretary to move these amendments en bloc, please?
Move en bloc.
Thank you. Does any member object to a single question being put on these amendments? Since no member objects, the question is that Amendments 16, 17, 18, 19, 106, 20 and 21 are agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are. That then brings us to Group 8, carrying out of functions conferred on officers of local authorities and health boards. And I call Amendment 22 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, grouped with Amendments 23 to 31. And I ask the Cabinet Secretary to move Amendment 22 and speak to all amendments in the group, please.
Deputy Presiding Officer, amendments in this group ensure that Sections 20A and 20B of the Bill operate in practice in the way that is intended. The deeming provisions in Sections 20A and 20B are necessary to ensure that certain specific functions operate properly when health and social care functions are integrated. Amendments 24, 26, 29 and 31 provide that the deeming provisions in Sections 20A and 20B only relate to provisions which are prescribed by regulations. Amendments 22 and 27 are minor amendments to refer to functions conferred on local authority and health board officers conferred by virtue of an enactment. Amendments 23 and 28 provide that before the deeming provisions apply, any additional conditions which are prescribed by regulations are satisfied. The effect of these amendments is to make this subject to further ministerial control to ensure on a case-by-case basis that it is appropriate for Sections 20A2 or 20B2 to apply to a particular function. Amendments 25 and 30 are minor amendments to ensure that sections 20A and 20B apply where an integration authority is a health board and local authority acting jointly as provided for under section 42D of the bill, so that staff of either body can carry out any function in which sections 20A and 20B apply. I move Amendment 22 in my name.
No other member wishes to speak. Cabinet Secretary, do you wish to add anything further?
No, thank you.
Question then, is that Amendment 22 be agreed to? Are we all agreed? We are. I therefore call Amendments 23 to 31, all in the name of the Cabinet Secretary and all previously debated, and I ask the Cabinet Secretary to move these amendments en bloc.
Move en bloc.
Does any member object to a single question being put on these amendments? In which case the question is that Amendments 23 to 31 are agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are. That then brings us to Group 9, Directions by Integration Authority, and I call Amendment 32 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, which has been grouped with Amendments 33 to 42, and I ask the Cabinet Secretary to move Amendment 32 and speak to all amendments in the group, please.
Deputy Presiding Officer, Amendments 32, 33 and 36 clarify that a person carrying out a function under a direction from an integration authority is accountable for carrying out of the function. Amendment 34 clarifies matters relating to finance as they pertain to directions and provides that where a health board function has been delegated which is carried out in a hospital which serves 2 or more local authority areas, the direction must set out the amount set aside by the health board for use by the person to carry out the function. Amendment 37 requires that the direction must also include instructions for how the amounts set aside or paid are to be used. Amendments 35 and 39 provide consistency with the effect of Amendment 34, and Amendment 38 provides consistency on liability as set out at Stage 2. Amendment 40 removes a redundant provision that is unnecessary to achieve the required effect. Amendments 41 and 42 clarify the circumstances in which Scottish ministers may make an order, providing that an integration joint board may decide not to issue directions, where Scottish ministers consider an order would not only contribute to achieving the national health and wellbeing outcomes, but also further achieve the integration delivery principles. I move Amendment 32 in my name.
Many thanks. No other member has indicated they wish to speak. Cabinet Secretary, do you wish to add anything?
No, thank you.
In which case the question is that Amendment 32 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are. I call Amendments 33 to 42, all in the name of the Cabinet Secretary and all previously debated, and I ask the Cabinet Secretary to move these amendments en bloc.
Move en bloc.
Many thanks. Does any member object to a single question being put on these amendments? No. The question therefore is that Amendments 33 to 42 are agreed. Are we all agreed? We are. That then brings us to Group 10, Integration Authority Strategic Planning, and I call Amendment 43 in the name of Rhoda Grant, which is grouped with other amendments as shown in the groupings, and I ask Rhoda Grant to move Amendment 43 and speak to all amendments in the group, please.
I move Amendment 43 and speak to the others in the group. Amendment 43 is about allowing people who require support packages to move with confidence between local authority areas. Currently, you need to live in a local authority area before you can be assessed for care. This prohibits people moving because they have no confidence of the services they'll receive or whether or not they'll be adequate for their particular needs. People need to move for personal and work-related reasons. And it's important, therefore, that they make these decisions, they have confidence in what they'll receive by a service provider, ensuring that it's adequate for their needs. Immediately they move. They also need to take into account the cost of services. Different local authorities charge for different services. They need to factor this in if they're actually moving for something like work-related reasons. The rest of us would factor in things like pension payment, overtime, travel to work. They need to factor in the costs of living within that area before they can make a decision to move. Therefore, it's very important that they have this information as soon as possible when they start looking at those decisions. It's a basic human right which the rest of us take for granted. Moving house, we all know, can be daunting, and it's not a decision we take lightly. And therefore it's much more difficult for someone who is dependent on assistance to live their lives. The amendment puts a duty on local authorities to take into account the needs of service users moving into their area, and this needs to be put in action as quickly as possible to allow them to make those decisions and have informed choices. I also have Amendment 116 in this group, which ensures that representatives of service users and a representative of carers is placed on the strategic planning group. It's important that we embrace co-production. Care is not something that happens to people. It's something that they should have control over, both the design and what it helps them to achieve. They must have autonomy over this and must be involved in how we design their care. Person-centred care is widely recognised, but sometimes it's delivered in a way that is really paternalistic. We need to recognise that when people need assistance to live and go about their daily lives, they are still entitled to live their lives the way they see fit. This amendment means that those principles are at the heart of service design, and I would urge that members support them. I would also support the other amendments in this group, especially that of Nanette Milne, 117, which involves the voluntary sector in the strategic plan, which I think is very important.
Many thanks. Cabinet Secretary, can I ask you to speak to Amendment 44 and other amendments in the group, please?
Great. Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. Amendments in this group relate to integrated strategic planning, which lies at the heart of the bill and process of reform. The aim of Rhoda Grant's Amendment 43 is to improve portability of services when a service user is moving between two local authority areas. I am sympathetic to Rhoda Grant's concerns in this regard. When we updated guidance on this issue in 2010, we were made aware of how difficult it can be for people to move if they're not sure that the care services they need will be in place when they move. However, I do not believe that this amendment provides a workable approach to tackling this challenge. The basis for the local authority providing a service to a service user is based on their physical presence in that local authority area, so a local authority cannot begin to provide services to an individual until the service user is physically present in their area. As I said, though, I am aware of the importance of this issue. The bill places a duty on integration authorities to have regard to the effect of their strategic plans on other integration authorities, which provides for the broad imperative that no integration authority can plan for and deliver care in isolation from others. The bill also places service users firmly at the centre of service planning and delivery and embeds their perspective within all the processes of co-production that it describes. Therefore, I cannot support Amendment 43 and call upon Rhoda Grant to withdraw it. I do commit, nonetheless, to continue to work closely with stakeholders and partners on guidance to ensure that local systems set up effective voluntary systems that work together to carry out assessments in advance of a person moving between local authority areas, especially where people may move frequently, for example, gypsy and traveller communities. Turning to Amendments 116 and 117 from Rhoda Grant and Nanette Milne respectively, the effect of these amendments would be to make provision on the face of the bill that a service user, a representative of carers and a broad range of third sector organisations are all directly involved in strategic planning. These amendments are not necessary. I provided the Health and Sport Committee with policy statements at Stage 2 that made clear my intention to set out in regulations which groups of people must be included in local strategic planning groups. Regulations will include service users, carers and representatives of the third sector in this regard. It would be disproportionate to list individual groups on the face of the bill while leaving the involvement of other key parties, such as health boards, local authorities, GPs and social care professionals, to regulations. I therefore do not support Amendments 116 and 117 and call upon Rhoda Grant and Nanette Milne to withdraw them. Turning to the amendments in my name, Amendment 44 ensures that where an integration authority sets out a start date for integration in its strategic plan, that date can only be earlier than the date that will be prescribed by the Scottish Ministers for integration to begin. Amendments 45 and 46 are minor amendments ensuring clarity that the Integration Authority must have regard to the effect of its strategic plan on services, facilities and resources used. Amendment 50 makes clear that the Strategic Planning Group is the integration authorities, not the constituent authorities. Amendment 50 also allows for the fact that a health board may have representatives in more than one strategic planning group if it is in integrated arrangements with more than one local authority. Amendment 107 corrects a reference to another section of the bill. Amendment 114 is a minor amendment which ensures that it is clear that it is the local authority that nominates its own representatives on the strategic planning group. Amendment 115 is a minor amendment which ensures that it is clear that where the integrated arrangement includes more than one local authority with a single health board, it is the local authorities that nominate their own representative on the strategic planning group. Thank you.
Thank you, Cabinet Secretary. I now call Lynette Milne to speak to Amendment 117 and other amendments in the group, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Amendment 117 in my name is arguably the most important of my proposed amendments to the bill. It respects the third sector as a key strategic partner alongside health boards and local authorities. This sector forms a major part of the wider health and social landscape, particularly in relation to preventative support, and it delivers over a third of registered social care. As such, its role should certainly be clearly articulated in statutory guidance and secondary legislation, if not on the face of the bill. The Health and Social Care Alliance and many others have called and continue to call for third sector sign-off of strategic plans prepared by health and social care partnerships, citing that the sector's involvement in joint signing off under the Reshaping Care for Older People Change Fund has enabled many areas to overcome barriers to partnership and has been a key driver for the cultural change that's widely acknowledged as the essential foundation for integration. The sector thinks that without a more formalised role, there is a risk that the bill will not fully achieve its policy objectives. Whilst not as strong as the joint sign-off arrangements under Reshaping Care for Older People, the Alliance have given support to my amendment, which proposes that third sector organisations are invited to express their views on draft strategic plans and that these would have to be taken into account. This would help to embed the role of the third sector as a key strategic partner clearly on the face of the bill. I'm also happy to support Rhoda Grant's Amendment 43, requiring strategic plans to set out arrangements for considering the needs of service users moving between local authority areas, and also her Amendment 116, which gives representation on strategic planning groups to service users and carers. And I'm happy to support the amendments in the name of the Cabinet Secretary. Thank you. I move Amendment 117.
Many thanks. I have no other members wishing to contribute to this part of the debate, so I ask Rhoda Grant to wind up and indicate if you intend to press or withdraw.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. Can I say to the Cabinet Secretary that I understand guidance is in place with regard to portability of care, but it's not working and it really needs legislation. He said in his own speech that local authorities cannot design a care package until someone is living there. Well, any of us who have had experience in trying to bring together a care package, either for elderly parents or other people, know how long it takes to design. This is a real barrier, and that it stops people moving about, and surely that is part of their human rights. They can't choose to move without the knowledge of the service they're going to receive, and I would really ask the Cabinet Secretary to reconsider his support of this amendment. Amendment 43 really puts users and carers at the heart of this bill. It's a hugely bureaucratic bill, all about systems and bodies and how we set them up. But if we're not doing this to actually
Ms Grant, sorry, can I stop you a moment? There's too much chatter going on in the chamber. Could you also pull your microphone round slightly? Thank you.
If we're not actually legislating in this bill for the use of service users and carers, if this bill is not designed to make their lives better, then I don't know what we're here for. Therefore, it's important that they should be on the very heart of the bill, that they should be on the face of the bill, and I would urge support of motion Amendment 42 as well.
Thank you. The question is that Amendment 43 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Parliament is not agreed. This is the first division in this group, therefore it will be a 1-minute division. Please vote now. Order. The result of the vote on amendment number 43 is as follows. Yes, 53. No, 62. There were no abstentions. The amendment is therefore not agreed to. I now call amendments 44, 107, 45, 46 and 47, all in the name of the Cabinet Secretary and all previously debated, and I ask the Cabinet Secretary to move these amendments en bloc, please.
Move en bloc.
Many thanks. Does any member object to a single question being put on these amendments? No member objects. Therefore, the question is that amendments 44, 107, 45, 46 and 47 are agreed to. Are we all agreed? Sorry, I'm going to ask that again. Are we all agreed? We are. I now call Amendment 108 in the name of Malcolm Chisholm, already debated with Amendment 9. And I ask Malcolm Chisholm to move or not to move.
Move.
The member has moved. The question is that Amendment 108 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division. This will be a 30-second division. Please vote now. Order. The result of the vote on Amendment 108 in the name of Malcolm Chisholm is yes 54, no 61. There were no abstentions. The amendment is therefore not agreed. I call Amendment 109 in the name of Nanette Millen, which has already been debated with Amendment 9. And I ask Nanette Millen to move or not to move.
Not moved.
Sorry, did you say not moved? The member has not moved. I now call Amendment 110 in the name of Nanette Millen, already debated with Amendment 9, and I ask Nanette Millen to move or not to move.
Not moved.
Not moved. I therefore call Amendment 48 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, which has already been debated with Amendment 9, and I ask the Cabinet Secretary to move formally.
Move formally.
Many thanks. The question is that Amendment 48 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are. I therefore call Amendment 111 in the name of Malcolm Chisholm, already debated with Amendment 9, and I ask Malcolm Chisholm to move or not move.
Moved.
The member has moved the amendment. The question therefore is that Amendment 111 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are not agreed. There will be a division. This will be a 30-second division. Please vote now. The result of the vote on amendment number 111 in the name of Malcolm Chisholm is yes 53, no 62. There were no abstentions. The amendment is therefore not agreed to. I therefore call amendment 112 in the name of Malcolm Chisholm, already debated with amendment 9, and I ask Malcolm Chisholm to move or not to move.
Move.
The member has moved. The question is that amendment 112 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division. This will be a 30-second division. Please vote now. The result of the vote on amendment number 112 in the name of Malcolm Chisholm is yes 53, no 62. There were no abstentions. The amendment is therefore not agreed to. I now call Amendment 113 in the name of Malcolm Chisholm, already debated with Amendment 9, and I ask Malcolm Chisholm to move or not to move.
Move.
The member has moved the amendment. The question is that Amendment 113 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Parliament is not agreed. There will be a 30-second division. Please vote now. Order. The result of the vote on amendment number 113 in the name of Malcolm Chisholm is yes 54, no 62. There were no abstentions. The amendment is therefore not agreed to. I now call amendment 49 in the name of Neil Findlay, already debated with amendment 9, and to ask Neil Findlay to move or not move.
Move.
The member has moved. The question is that amendment 49 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Parliament is not agreed. This will be a 30-second division. Please vote now. Order. The result of the vote on amendment number 49 in the name of Neil Findlay is yes 39, no 77. There were no abstentions. The amendment is therefore not agreed to. I now call amendment 114 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, already debated with amendment 43, and to ask the Cabinet Secretary to move formally.
Move formally.
Thank you. And if members would stop the chat, I will ask the question, which is that amendment 114 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are. I call amendment 115 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, already debated with amendment 43, and to ask the Cabinet Secretary to move formally, please.
Move formally.
Question is that amendment 115 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. I call amendment 116 in the name of Rhoda Grant, which has already been debated with amendment 43, and to ask Rhoda Grant to move or not move. Moved. The member has moved. The question therefore is that amendment 116 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Parliament is not agreed. There will be a 30-second division. Please vote now. The result of the vote on amendment number 116 in the name of Rhoda Grant is yes 54, no 62. There were no abstentions. The amendment is therefore not agreed to. I now call amendment 50 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, already debated with amendment 43, and to ask the Cabinet Secretary to move formally.
Move formally.
Question then is that amendment 50 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are. I now call amendment 117 in the name of Nanette Millen, already debated with amendment 43, and to ask Nanette Millen to move or not move. The member has moved the amendment. The question then is that amendment 117 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division. This will be a 30-second division. Please vote now. The result of the vote on Amendment 117 in the name of Nanette Milne is yes 53, no 62. There were no abstentions. The amendment is therefore not agreed to. That then brings us to Group 11, Review and Replacement of Strategic Plan, and I call Amendment 51 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, group with Amendments 52 to 55, and I ask the Cabinet Secretary to move Amendment 51 and speak to all amendments in the group, please.
Deputy Presiding Officer, these amendments ensure that when a replacement strategic plan is produced following a review of the plan, the Integration Authority is subject to the same requirements as applying to the development of a first strategic plan. In other words, the Integration Authority must pay regard to the national outcomes for health and well-being and the integration delivery principles, along with requirements in consultation, provision of information and publication that are set out in the bill in relation to strategic planning when it is producing a replacement strategic plan. Amendments 52 and 53 are drafting amendments, and I move Amendment 51 in my name.
Many thanks. No one else has indicated that they wish to speak. Cabinet Secretary, do you wish to add anything? Question then is that Amendment 51 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are. I therefore call Amendments 52 to 55, 118, 119, 56 and 57, all in the name of the Cabinet Secretary and all previously debated, and to ask the Cabinet Secretary to please move these amendments en bloc.
Move en bloc.
Many thanks. Does any member object to a single question being put on these amendments? Since no member does, the question is that Amendments 52, 53, 54, 55, 118, 119, 56 and 57 are all agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are. That then brings us to Group 12, Review of Integration Scheme Impact on Children, and I call Amendment 120 in the name of Bob Doris, grouped with Amendments 121, 122 and 123, and I ask Bob Doris to move Amendment 120 and speak to all amendments in the group, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I say that these amendments were in part inspired by meeting parents at a Glasgow project, which was a children's inclusion partnership service jointly run by Barnardo Scotland and Stepping Stones for Families in Maryhill. Many of the families there, like many across Scotland living in poverty, need the support that local children and family services provide, and it is vital that this bill improves the services that they rely on. Through the scrutiny of the bill, the Health and Sport Committee has been considering carefully the impact that this bill could potentially have on children's services. I welcome amendments that were brought forward at stage 2 by the Cabinet Secretary that clarify that there are a number of options open to health boards and local authorities as they consider whether children's services should be part of the wider integration agenda along with health and social care. It will of course be up to local decision making as to whether children's services are moved into integration schemes or kept separate, and that is of course absolutely right. However, it is important in particular we don't create a situation where transitions for young people moving from children's services to adult services become difficult, or that the systems don't integrate or dovetail with each other. Barnardo Scotland argued at stage 1 that it was not always clear where the responsibility for children's services would lie, particularly in those areas where integration authorities do not choose to take on responsibility for children's services. They said at stage 1 that they were concerned that any confusion could create uncertainty. However, Barnardo's, like most other organisations, they are fully supported to the principles underpinning this integration agenda. I would look for a commitment from the Cabinet Secretary that he would be willing to ensure that transitions do not become an issue, and that regardless of whether children's services are integrated or not, that guidance will ensure that local authorities and health boards consider the impact of integration on children and children's services as they review their integration schemes in the future in due course. I would also seek that a commitment is given that in doing so that children's organisations will be involved as appropriate as guidance is developed, and I would welcome that reassurance this afternoon. Presiding Officer, if these commitments are forthcoming, I would be content to withdraw the amendment I am speaking to just now and the related amendments within the group.
Many thanks. Now call on Jim Hume.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I recognise that Bob Doris wants to make a point of making children's rights a key part of this bill, and that is a very good thing. Children should be considered in any decisions that are made, and I shall support Bob Doris if he does push his amendments. But the Cabinet Secretary has already said this afternoon regarding independent living from Malcolm Chisholm that disabled people shouldn't be highlighted as being getting special treatment, and this bill is about everybody. It should therefore be a given that children are considered in any health and social integration, as should older people, as should disabled, as should LGBT people, as should women, as should ethnic minorities, as should all sectors of our community, in fact. So I'd be quite interested in why Bob Doris thought it was just necessary to have these group of amendments to only highlight the rights of children, but not others.
Many thanks. Cabinet Secretary.
Deputy Presiding Officer, the bill rightly provides for local flexibility for health boards and local authorities to include other services beyond adult health and social care in their integrated arrangements, such as children's services. Where statutory partners choose not to include children's services, this does not negate the need to plan effectively for these services, nor does it remove the need to ensure effective transitions between children's and adult services. Where children's services are included in the integrated arrangement, the integration planning principles require health boards and local authorities to take account of the needs of service users. Similarly, the national health and wellbeing outcomes must be applied and taken into account for all users of services within the integrated arrangement when reviewing an integration scheme. It is important that the planning requirements of the Children and Young People Bill and this bill are aligned, and so Amendment 84 in Group 14 provides for this statutory link. I also committed at Stage 2 to ensure that integration joint boards are included as partners in community planning under the Community Empowerment Bill. Further, under Part 1 of the Children and Young People Bill, local authorities and health boards, amongst others, will be required to report on how they are addressing children's rights as set out by the UNCRC. I welcome the opportunity to assure Parliament that where statutory partners choose to integrate only adult services, appropriate mechanisms are in place and robust consideration has been given to the planning of other services. Statutory guidance will further strengthen these arrangements, and I therefore hope that I have reassured Bob Doris on all the points he raised, which are perfectly legitimate, and I'm glad to hopefully assure him that we are doing the right thing by our children. I would therefore ask Bob Doris to withdraw amendments 120 to 123.
Many thanks. Mr Doris, to wind up and press or withdraw your amendment.
Presiding Officer, in summing up, can I just first of all give reference to the points Jim Hume has made? He does make a reasonable point about singling out certain groups on the face of the bill over others, but that said, I wanted to make sure that Bernardo's and others who do want to ensure that guidance is fully consistent with the ambitions contained within this bill will be appropriate, given the comments that the Cabinet Secretary has made and the strong reassurances that I believe he has given. I'm minded not to move 120 and withdraw the other amendments within that group.
Thank you very much. So does any member object to Mr Doris withdrawing his amendment 120? As no member does, it's now withdrawn, and I now call amendment 121 in the name of Bob Doris, already debated, with amendment 120 to move or not move.
Not move, Presiding Officer.
Thank you. So, call Amendment 58 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, already debated, with Amendment 8. Cabinet Secretary to move.
Move formally.
Thank you very much. Question is that Amendment 58 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are. Thank you very much. Now call Amendment 122 in the name of Bob Doris, already debated, with Amendment 120. Mr Doris, to move or not?
Not move, Presiding Officer.
Thank you. Call Amendment 123 in the name of Bob Doris, already debated, with Amendment 120. Mr Doris, to move or not?
Not moved.
Thank you. I now call Amendments 59 to 62, 124, 63 and 64, all in the name of the Cabinet Secretary and all previously debated, and I invite the Cabinet Secretary to move these amendments en bloc.
Move en bloc.
And does any member object to a single question being put on these amendments? And as no member appears to, the question is that amendments 59, 60, 61, 62, 124, 63 and 64 are agreed to. Are we all agreed? Thank you. We now move to Group 13. And I call Amendment 65 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, grouped with Amendments 66 to 82. Cabinet Secretary to move Amendment 65 and speak to all amendments in the group, please.
Deputy Presiding Officer, the Bill allows Healthcare Improvement Scotland and Social Care Work Scotland Improvement Scotland, known as the Care Inspectorate, to inspect the coordination of health and social care services. Upon reflection, I do not think that this goes far enough, and so I have extended this remit to inspect the planning, organisation and coordination of these services. This broader inspection framework will provide a better basis for scrutinising integrated services. Amendment 82 allows His and SCISWIS, when undertaking a joint inspection, to invite other bodies mentioned in Section 1156 of the Public Services Reform Scotland Act 2010 to carry out an inspection with them, and I move Amendment 65 in my name.
Thank you very much. And I presume you don't wish to wind up. Thank you. So the question is that Amendment 65 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Thank you. We are. Now call Amendments 66 to 83, all in the name of the Cabinet Secretary and all previously debated. Cabinet Secretary to move these amendments en bloc.
Move en bloc.
Thank you. And does any member object to a single question being put on these amendments? And as it appears no one does, the question is that Amendments 66 to 83 are agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are. I now move to Group 14 and call Amendment 84 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary and a group on its own. Cabinet Secretary to move and speak to amendment, please.
Deputy Presiding Officer, Amendment 84 inserts a new section after Section 41, which adds a new paragraph into the definition of other service provider in Section 7.1 of the Children and Young People Bill. Integration joint boards are added to the definition of other service providers, as I referred to earlier. This amendment ensures proper cohesion in terms of the planning requirements placed in statutory bodies under this bill and under the Children and Young People Bill by ensuring that those requirements apply to integration joint boards established under this bill, and I move Amendment 84 in my name.
Bob Doris.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Presiding Officer, my amendments in Group 12, the Cabinet Secretary gave reference to this amendment, Amendment 84. But Group 12 was to ensure that a review of health and social care integration would place rights to the child and outcomes for children at its heart, and I was reassured that that could be dealt with in guidance. However, in this instance, Amendment 84, I agree with the Cabinet Secretary such matters need to be placed on the face of the bill. I very much hope integration boards will, if not in the short term, at some point in the future, choose to integrate children's services. In doing so, we must ensure that government legislation in various areas are properly aligned. It is right, therefore, to amend the newly passed Children and Young People's Act to ensure that, should services be integrated, that the Integration Board decides to integrate children's services, that board is fully recognised within the Children and Young People's Act. This is crucial in terms of strategic planning and in terms of ensuring that the ambitions of the Children and Young People's Act are realised as part of the integration agenda, and will be supporting Amendment 84 this afternoon.
Many thanks. Cabinet Secretary to wind up, please.
I don't think I need to say any more. Thank you, Presiding Officer.
Many thanks then. So the question is that Amendment 84 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are. Thank you very much. And now move to Group 15 and I call Amendment 85 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary. Group with Amendment 86. Cabinet Secretary to move Amendment 85 and speak to both amendments in the group, please.
Deputy Presiding Officer, Amendment 85 seeks to achieve the stated policy intention of allowing NHS bodies access to a range of joint venture structures for the management of and disposal of assets. The amendment extends the purposes for which joint venture structures can be formed by NHS bodies to include the management and disposal of assets. The purposes for which joint ventures can be formed by NHS bodies are closely defined in Section 84B of the National Health Service Scotland Act 1978. Amendment 86 is a technical amendment which introduces a mechanism to provide future flexibility in the use of joint venture structures by health boards by allowing Scottish ministers to make regulations prescribing additional purposes for which joint ventures may be formed. Such purposes must relate to health functions under the 1978 Act, and I move Amendment 85 in my name.
Many thanks. Now call Nigel Dawn.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. I am speaking as the convener of the Delegated Powers and Law Reform Committee and on behalf of that committee. I am seeking clarification and reassurance from the Cabinet Secretary in relation to concerns the committee has about Amendment 86. This morning, the committee considered these Stage 3 amendments to the bill which relate to delegated powers. There are an unusually high number of such amendments for Stage 3. However, the committee has only concerns about Amendment 86. In a letter to the committee, the Scottish Government explained that this amendment confers a power on Scottish ministers to prescribe additional purposes to those expressed in the bill for which the Scottish ministers may form or participate in forming bodies corporate and participate in bodies corporate that are formed. The letter further explains that the power will enable ministers to adjust the purposes for which Scottish ministers and health boards may form or participate in bodies corporate without the need for further primary legislation. But the power is limited in that the purpose must relate to the functions conferred by the National Health Service Scotland Act 1978. The letter does not, however, offer any further explanation as to why this power has been taken, and there is no explanation as to why the need for this power has only become apparent at this junction. Nor is there any explanation offered or examples given as to how the power might be used. In the absence of such an explanation or examples, the committee was unable to form a clear view on the appropriateness of the power contained within the amendment. Furthermore, in the absence of this information, the committee is unclear as to the significance of the matters that may be provided for by this power, and is therefore unable to form a clear view as to whether the negative procedure is the appropriate procedure to attach to this power, or whether a higher level of parliamentary scrutiny would be more appropriate. I am therefore inviting the Cabinet Secretary to provide further explanation as to why this power is being taken, how it might be used, and the significance of the matters it might be used for, and therefore the appropriateness of the use of the negative procedure for regulations under this power, please.
Many thanks. Now call Neil Findlay.
Thanks very much. Amendment 86 is a very significant omission from the legislation at stage 1 and 2, and should have been brought forward. It shouldn't have been brought forward at this late stage without having gone through any real scrutiny. The ability to form a company or body corporate for a broad range of purposes without any real scrutiny is not the way to legislate, and there may be perfectly legitimate reasons for this, but the Minister has to respect Parliament and the parliamentary process when bringing forward his legislation.
Many thanks. Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, I am happy to explain to the committee the reasoning behind this amendment. The purpose behind Section 84B of the 1978 Act is to ensure that best value is obtained in the use of health service resources and that services can be provided in conjunction with other bodies where this is in the interest of the public purse. It is likely that the majority of purposes for which joint ventures are used will be covered by the wording of the 1978 Act. However, Amendment 86 is necessary to allow an expansion of the purposes for which joint ventures may be used so as not to stifle innovation. I can reassure members that this power is intended to be used for narrow purposes. The power for the Scottish ministers to prescribe purposes is constrained by the provision requiring it to be linked to the functions under the 1978 Act. Given this restriction and the intention to use the power to make narrow technical changes to the purposes for which joint ventures are permitted, negative parliamentary procedure allows a sufficient level of scrutiny. Examples of where joint ventures may be formed in future would be provision of shared services or support services in conjunction with local authorities, such as hard and soft facilities management, which would include non-NHS building services or services such as catering, vehicle maintenance, etc. This amendment would allow further similar uses of joint ventures which may otherwise be obstructed. Section 84B was established for a particular purpose, and the key point is that where innovation in this area becomes possible, then seeking an appropriate primary legislative vehicle to amend the purposes set out in Section 84B is very restrictive. This amendment seeks to enable innovation and remove barriers and delay, and I hope this provides provides the necessary reassurance to the convener of the committee and indeed to the committee itself. Thank you.
Many thanks. And so the question is that Amendment 85 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are. I now call Amendments 86, 125, 87 and 88, all in the name of the Cabinet Secretary and all previously debated. And Cabinet Secretary, move these amendments on block.
Move
please.
on block.
Thank you. Does any member object to these questions being put en bloc? And as no member does, the question is that Amendment 86, 125, 87 and 88 are agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are. I now call Amendment 89 in the name of Neil Findlay, already debated with Amendment 9. Mr Findlay, to move or not?
Move.
Thank you. So the question is that Amendment 89 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are not agreed. There will therefore be a 1-minute division. Please vote now. The result of the vote on amendment number 89 in the name of Neil Findlay is yes 52, no 59. There were no abstentions and the amendment is therefore not agreed. I now call amendments 90 to 94, all in the name of the Cabinet Secretary and all previously debated, and I invite the Cabinet Secretary to move these amendments en bloc, please.
En bloc.
Does any member object to a single question being put on these amendments? As it appears that no one does, the question is that amendments 90, 91, 92, 93 and 94 are agreed to. Are we all agreed? And that brings us to the end of consideration of amendments. 20. And as we have completed amendments ahead of schedule, I am minded to accept a motion without notice on behalf of the Parliamentary Bureau under Rule 11.2.4 of Standing Orders that decision time be brought forward to 5:20. Minister, thank you. Formally moved. So the question is that decision time be brought forward to 5:20. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are. Thank you very much. And so we will now move to the next item of business, which is a debate on motion number 9115 in the name of Alec Neil on the Public Bodies Joint Working Scotland Bill. I'd invite members who wish to speak in the debate to press their request to speak buttons now, and I'd further invite those members who are leaving the chamber to do so quickly and quietly. I now call on Mr Alec Neil, Cabinet Secretary, to speak to and move the motion. 10 minutes, please.
Thank you very much indeed, Deputy Presiding Officer. It gives me considerable pleasure to open this Stage 3 debate on the Public Bodies Joint Working Scotland Bill, a bill that brings together health and social care services in Scotland. It is particularly appropriate then that its development has been characterised by strong committed effort, indeed joined-up teamwork, in other words, by members across the chamber and in committee. And if I may quote myself, I think we've all been on the same page, trying to achieve the same things, even when we disagreed about the particular wording. I would particularly like to thank Duncan McNeill and the Health and Sport Committee as lead committee for their careful consideration of the bill, and my thanks also goes to the Local Government and Regeneration Committee, the Finance Committee and the Delegated Powers and Law Reform Committee for their careful scrutiny, input and support. I would also like to pay tribute to the work of my own team in the civil service, who have provided me, as always, with first-class support at every stage. Much of the benefit of the bill we've heard before today, but it draws upon the commitment, cooperation and inspiration of a broad and deep range of partners and stakeholders across all sectors. Local government, the National Health Service, the third and independent sectors, professional groups and representatives of patients, carers, service users and families, all in different and complementary ways, have lent us their expertise, their experience, their ambitions and their aspirations. Our consultation on the proposals that underpin the bill received over 300 responses, and the information sessions we ran during the consultation exercise attracted roughly 900 attendees for discussion and debate. The bill, as introduced in May last year, yielded 85 written responses during Stage 1, and many of our stakeholders and partners have been represented during committee sessions at Stage 2. And by no means least our various working groups, particularly our Bill Advisory Group and Ministerial Strategic Group on Health and Community Care, both of which I chair, have been active participants in the process of development right up until today. I therefore start this debate by signalling my sincere thanks to everyone who's been involved so far, but of course the job is not yet finished. I am looking forward to continuing working with you, everybody, as we develop regulations and guidance to support the bill, and most importantly, as we put integrated arrangements into place. The whole point, indeed the only point of integrating health and social care is to improve people's lives. Even as we debate this bill, our focus is on improving outcomes for people who use health and social care services today across Scotland. Deputy Presiding Officer, the Public Bodies Joint Working Scotland Bill, perhaps not the sexiest name for a piece of legislation, but a very important piece of legislation, provides a legislative framework for integrating health and social care services. And I remember at the start of this process, when a former Labour Minister advised me to stick to our guns to make this a statutory requirement by local authorities and health boards, because there have been many attempts in the past to integrate health and social care services with very varying degrees of success or lack of success. And I think the statutory underpinning we are providing today is an essential for making sure that such integration does work, and does work within a timeous period.
Yeah. Neil Findlay.
I think one of the things we can learn, if we look at the area that I live in West Lothian, much of the advances that have been made there are without legislation, and that much of the challenge in this is about the cultural change within health and social care, maybe not so much as the statutory change.
Secretary.
Well, absolutely, and West Lothian has actually been a very good example of where integration has worked very successfully under successive administrations. But unfortunately, I could give many examples of other local authority areas where this has not been the case, and that's why we need to make this happen on a statutory basis, so that the experience of West Lothian can be rolled out across the country. The legislation also sits very well alongside the Self-Directed Support Act, piloted through Parliament by my colleague Michael Matheson last year, as well as other policies such as the Children and Young People's Bill we passed last week that drive forward our commitment to personalising care. By focusing on person-centred planning and delivery, this bill helps to ensure joined-up seamless health and social care provision that will improve people's lives. It will support our commitment to make sure that people get the right care in the right place at the right time, and to support people to stay in their own homes or another homely setting as independently as possible for as long as possible. I will take a moment to remind members of the foundations of our approach. We are legislating for national health and wellbeing outcomes that will underpin the requirement for health boards and local authorities to plan effectively together to deliver quality, sustainable care services for the people they serve. We are bringing together the very substantial resources that we commit to health and social care in Scotland to make it easier for local systems to deliver joined-up, effective, efficient services that meet the needs of increasing numbers of people with long-term, often complex conditions. Many of those people are older, but not all of them. And an important feature of our approach is that local systems must integrate for all adults and are free to choose locally to integrate children's services as well. And we're bringing together accountability for results across health and social care Too often in the past, people have found themselves between systems when there's no division in their lives between what we have historically categorised as health needs and social care needs. This bill focuses on the whole person and the needs of the community in which they live. It places coordinated planning and delivery requirements on statutory organisations that radiate out from people's needs, rather than expecting people to fit in to historic patterns of service planning and delivery. It responds to the findings of the Christie Commission report on the future delivery of public services that effective services must be designed with and for people and communities, and I believe designed by these people and communities as well, not delivered on a top-down basis for administrative convenience. Also, and this is key, this bill makes provision to ensure a full and proper role for clinicians and other professionals in planning and delivering services. We have listened to concerns that role has been lost or diluted in recent years, and we have responded. We recognise that the expertise and sharp-end experience of the professions, along with the experience of people using services, must together guide the shape of services in future. Locality planning arrangements under this bill provide the locus and opportunity for effective professional leadership of integration. Integrated care, we know from the evidence on the subject, is all about successful co-production, people working together to tackle challenges in innovative ways. And when it comes to health and social care support, our emphasis in government is on prevention. We know that a concerted effort to anticipate people's needs and prevent problems arising in the first place is a way to improve outcomes. These are difficult challenges. As we have worked with partners and stakeholders to develop this legislation, we have not always agreed with one another. What is important, though, is that our shared goal, knowing what our destination is, and we've worked together to agree the route. That work goes on. We have today released updated data on delayed discharges. That shows us clearly that while we've made great strides in recent years, we have more work to do to make sure that people receive the quality of care that we all want to be proud of in Scotland. Of course, we're not starting from scratch. We can already see many examples, as we've just referred to, of good partnership working across Scotland. I saw one this morning, Cowan Court in Pennycook in Midlothian, a brilliant example of an innovative approach to integrating housing, social and health care. And it's this good practice we need to build upon and develop, increase the pace of rolling out these facilities across Scotland. This legislation provides the right foundation for those improvements, and it also provides the imperative that I believe is needed to ensure consistent progress across the country. This bill offers a good and careful balance. It sets out the framework for integration, and it makes it necessary requirements of health boards and local authorities to deliver effective integrated care. At the same time, it provides flexibility to allow local arrangements to respond to local needs and to encourage and enhance local innovation and local leadership. I welcome this opportunity to provide further clarity on the bill and to discuss the Stage 3 amendments which we have just completed. Presiding Officer, I move that the Parliament agrees that the Public Bodies Joint Working Scotland Bill be passed and thereby significantly enhance both the health and social care of the people of Scotland. Thank you.
Many thanks. I now call on Neil Findlay. 7 minutes or thereby, please, Mr Findlay.
Thanks, Presiding Officer. The issue of social care should be at the top of the political agenda in Scotland. As politicians discuss the intricacies of currency unions and the EU membership and all the rest of it, our elderly and vulnerable people are experiencing a care system in crisis as a direct result of cuts to local government. We know that most people want to, where appropriate, remain in their own homes amongst familiar people and surroundings for as long as possible. And we know that over the next decade we'll see a significant rise in the elderly population as we live longer lives, or some of us live longer lives depending on where we live and how rich or poor we are. And we have to be careful how we speak about this issue because increasing life expectancy is all too often spoken of in negative terms, with phrases bandied about such as time bomb and burden. But living longer also throws up tremendous opportunities for the older population through work, leisure, travel and community opportunities. More people having more time to enjoy a more fulfilling life and contribute to our society. So I think we should all be careful about how we refer to our ageing population. However, we cannot get away from the fact that there will be financial and practical implications of this. Politicians and policy makers have to address these matters and plan for it now, not when it becomes a reality, or indeed it is a reality at the moment. This bill will move us a bit down that road, but it has missed the real issues facing social care in the here and now. My frustration at the way in which the bill has progressed is that it has failed to address the deep-seated problems in the care system, one of which is an issue maybe a lot of us want to avoid, and that is money. Presiding Officer, the savings identified in the Christie Commission that are supposed to be achieved by freeing up NHS beds through people remaining at home haven't a cat and hell's chance of being achieved under the current social care system. Organisation after organisation that I have met with and spoken to, when asked the question, has said the social care system is in a state of crisis. If we look at the care home sector in Edinburgh, we see 15% of the private care home places out of commission, 20% in Glasgow, 15% in Highland, all out of commission because of concerns about standards. In Edinburgh alone, over 100 NHS beds are blocked because there is no safe place for people to be discharged to. And I understand today there was further bad news on that. A few weeks ago we saw a care home in Fife getting top marks from an inspector 1 week, then appalling levels of care identified the next week, and the same inspector regrading the home to a much lower level. And in home care we see a social care system based on the minimum wage, with working conditions being driven down to the lowest common denominator, contract prices forced down, training budgets cut, a recruitment crisis, with staff morale on the floor. As one carer told me recently, people only go into home care because they can't get another job and only stay long enough until another one is found. Last week, Unison Scotland published its report, Scotland, A Time to Care. It's time to care. A survey of Scotland's home care workers. Let me quote you some excerpts from this very disturbing report. It said 56% of staff surveyed said they were on time-limited visits to their clients. These are usually 15 minutes, but some as low as 7. One worker said, "It's rush, rush, rush. I think they forget we are dealing with human beings, old ones at that." Another said, "Clients are anxious. They don't know which carer is coming from day to day. Clients are losing out. Care is not given properly. Clients are missed out or forgotten about. No one cares or listens to the staff or our clients." 50% of care staff said they don't get paid for travelling. Some travelling between clients. Some have to pay for their own uniforms. Some have to pay for their own phone calls back to their employer, and many don't get breaks. Another carer said, "The service is not able to retain staff due to terrible wages, and my workload has increased and I'm getting paid less." One said, "Before Christmas I ended up on 2 weeks sick leave because I was doing 16 to 18 visits during a long day and my body couldn't cope anymore. I had to work although I was sick, and when I asked my manager if I could take half a day off, I was told there was no one to cover my shift. My breaks were reduced to a minimum and there wasn't even time to have a meal during the day." The report highlights care visits being missed out, staff being asked to administer medication with almost no training, and corners being cut at every turn. In short, a system in crisis at a time when the Scottish Government White Paper claims, and I quote, that we have world-leading social care. I say to the Minister, come into the real world, speak to the people delivering care services and ask them if the social care system in Scotland is world-leading. Read this report and then please reflect on that statement. I believe we need to change the way in which social care is procured and delivered, and I certainly support moves within the procurement bill to omit social care contracts from having to advertise and compete. If contracts go to the private sector or third sector, then they should be awarded not on price, but on the basis of what added value can be offered. Social care is a vitally important job It should have a straight career structure, a training regime and pay and status to match. And I hope this bill will begin to move things forward, but I fear we have missed an opportunity to address the very real and deep-seated problems that exist in the here and now. There is good practice going on across Scotland, but if we don't get the basics right, then the system will continue to fail our vulnerable people.
Many thanks. I now call on Nanette Milne. 5 minutes or thereby, please, Mr.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. At the outset, let me say that the Scottish Conservatives will be supporting the bill at decision time this evening. It is, I think, a better bill following amendments at stages 2 and 3, many of them from the Government, and I am pleased that the Cabinet Secretary has taken on board a number of suggestions from stakeholders and opposition members. There is no doubt that across the board we have been seeking to achieve the best possible outcomes for adults requiring health and social care services. There have been some differences of opinion along the way on how best to reach that goal. But these have centred mainly on what should be on the face of the bill and what should be in guidance and statutory regulation. As I said at stage 1, I fully accept the necessity for this legislation because despite many initiatives in recent years, some of them very successful, to secure better integration of health and social care, joint working between partners to bridge the gap between primary and secondary health care and between health and social care is still at best patchy across the country. The bill is fairly technical, but basically the legislation will set the framework for the changes needed to achieve the joined-up services required by many adults in Scotland today and in the future, particularly the increasing number of elderly people with multiple health problems, both physical and cognitive, who have complex care needs requiring significant support from social services if they are to remain in their local communities, living a fulfilled and dignified life within their capabilities for as long as possible. But the legislation will only be successful if its fundamental aim of improving the well-being of recipients of care is at the forefront of its implementation, and that will require a change of culture and attitudes, and it will depend on strong leadership at local level, with the full cooperation of people across many disciplines, all focused on achieving the best possible outcomes for those in their care. It's not a cheap option, and it will involve some innovative thinking in service provision in an environment of ever-scarce resources. Neil Finlay makes a fair point about resources, and in my own city of Aberdeen, it is at the present time difficult to get home carers because of the many competing high salaries within the oil industry. Many people have been involved in the development of the bill at both stakeholder and government level, and all are to be congratulated in bringing it thus far. Although, as we know, much more cooperative work will be required to develop the statutory regulation and guidance which will determine the effectiveness of integration. Much is already going on in different parts of the country to bring about the integration of health and social care services at local level, and Health Committee members have seen the enthusiastic commitment of staff in both Highland and West Lothian as they work to this end under the 2 different models contained within the bill. The work is ongoing, but the commitment to person-centred care by developing services clearly focused on securing the best possible outcomes for people is very encouraging in these areas. Different parts of Scotland are at different stages of development of integrated services, and many are awaiting statutory guidance and regulation, so clearly it will be important to get that right. There are undoubtedly still concerns about how the legislation will work on the ground, and I'll mention 3 which have been articulated by the BMA in its Stage 3 briefing. There's a lack of clarity about the detail of the implementation of integration and the need for the Scottish Government to engage with organisations like the BMA in the development of regulations and guidelines. There's a lack of clarity on exactly how the third sector will interface with the statutory bodies to ensure a closer working relationship, because it has a crucial role at both strategic and at local level in the planning, design and the delivery of care. And finally, it is seen as vital, as promised by the Health Secretary, and I think I've said this before, that GPs will be embedded as key stakeholders in shaping the redesign of services, because otherwise they'll just walk away, and the new system will be no more successful than the discredited CHPs which it will replace. At local level, all interested parties must be closely involved in planning the care services required. GPs, as already stated, together with specialists in secondary care, nurses, AHPs, social workers, the third sector, service users and carers, all must have an input into planning services to properly meet the needs and achieve the best possible outcomes for those who require health and social care, to enable them to live as fulfilled a life as possible within their local communities. Presiding Officer, as I said at the outset, we will be supporting this legislation, but key to its success will be the guidance and regulation underpinning it, and we'll be watching carefully how this develops and asking for updates from the Cabinet Secretary on progress towards achieving the integrated services which our older population right across Scotland deserves, both now and into the future. Thank you.
Many thanks. I now call on Aileen MacLeod to be followed by Malcolm Chisholm. 4 minutes or thereby, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And I'm delighted to speak in support of this bill, which will implement substantial and wide-ranging reforms to the way we deliver adult health and social care. In the Health and Sport Committee, we have benefited from a wealth of collective experience and expertise from a wide range of stakeholders, including local government, the NHS, housing, our AHPs and the third and independent sectors. And representatives from these sectors provided invaluable written and oral evidence to the committee throughout our scrutiny of the bill, and we are very grateful for their efforts. And I sincerely hope that they feel, as I do, that their contribution has helped us to get to this stage where we have, I believe, the legislative framework that will achieve the aims which the Cabinet Secretary set out when we first debated integrating health and social care services across Scotland, and that is to improve outcomes for the growing numbers of people who need both health and social care support, most of whom have multiple complex needs, some of whom are older, and all of whom should have access to the right care at the right time and in the right place. Now, there is one stakeholder group, Presiding Officer, that I would like to mention this afternoon, and that is housing. And I very much welcome the Government's recognition of the key role that housing has to play in improving the health and well-being outcomes of our citizens, not least given the policy commitment and the 2020 vision to enable people to be cared for at home or in as homely a setting for as long as possible, and as the Cabinet Secretary said earlier, as independently as possible. So I'm glad that housing stakeholders will be added to the list of persons that Scottish ministers must consult before prescribing national outcomes for health and well-being. Now, many of us, Presiding Officer, can point to good examples in our own areas of where integrated care is happening already. Now, I recently visited the Crossroads, Newton Stewart and Macker's Care Attendant Scheme in Wigton in Dumfries and Galloway, which provides a range of services, including respite care, personal care, palliative care and assistance with transport and shopping. Now, the staff there do a fantastic job enabling more people to live independently, and they do this through close partnership working with social work services and the NHS, the Community Hospital in Newton Stewart, as well as with Marie Curie nurses, the occupational therapists and other health professionals. Their services help to integrate the care that an individual receives, so they are already delivering care in a person-centred way, but of course they are working in one area of a large rural region. And both the local council and the health board in Dumfries and Galloway have recognised the inherent strengths of existing arrangements which already deliver measurable benefits. And they also recognise that the locality is where we really can make a big difference to people's outcomes, because it's very much at that local level where service provision in the community is critically important. Now, I've reflected before, as has the Cabinet Secretary, that the localities are where the action will be and important decisions made. And the model that Dumfries and Galloway has chosen, which is around 4 localities which are based around the current area partnership committees, very much reflects that. And I think there is broad agreement across the region that integration will see a radical improvement at all levels across health and social care. Ultimately, that is our aim. And, Presiding Officer, this evening's vote is the culmination of a lengthy process of engagement, debate, scrutiny and amendment. And I'm confident that it will produce an outcome that we can all be proud of, an approach to adult health and social care which is genuinely seamless and responsive, with services firmly integrated around the needs of individuals, their carers and families, placing people at the centre of service planning and delivery. That was the message given by the Christie Commission, and I believe the legislation before us today will enable us to change the way in which we deliver public services in Scotland that better meet the needs of people in our communities. And I hope members across the chamber will support the bill this evening.
Many thanks. Now call on Malcolm Chisholm to be followed by Bob Doris.
Presiding Officer, I welcome this bill and I welcome the changes that the Cabinet Secretary was willing to make it both Stage 2 and Stage 3. For example, today, although he didn't go as far as I or disability organisations or other third sector organisations would have wished, he did incorporate to some extent the language of rights into the bill. And at Stage 2, he addressed some of the problems that I and others highlighted at Stage 1 in relation to the financial arrangements. For example, the original bill said that the Health Board must make a payment to the Integration Joint Board, and there was a fear that this would reintroduce contracting arrangements, which of course we put behind us in Scotland several years ago. So he did change that arrangement at Part 2 by using the language of money being set aside. So I do welcome the way in which he did make some changes. However, I think in welcoming the bill, we mustn't overstate the difference that it will make per se. I would say it is a necessary but not sufficient condition for making progress on better integrated care. As Alison Petch, perhaps the leading Scottish academic on community care, put it to the committee a few months ago, legislation is not really what drives day-to-day delivery. And we can look at that from 2 points of view. First of all, obviously the points that Neil Findlay made at various points today, that clearly there are wider issues that have to be addressed, for example, to do with the length of care visits. But the other point, of course, is that what really drives change is culture change. Again, that phrase has been used today and other times, leadership, and bringing teams together on the ground. And I think those words, on the ground, are absolutely fundamental. In fact, the BMA in the briefing that Nanette Milne has just mentioned used that phrase when they expressed concern about a lack of clarity of what integration will actually look like on the ground. And they then went on to say that the success or failure of integration will be the result of the effectiveness of the locality partnerships. I expressed concern at committee that we didn't have more in the bill about the locality arrangements. I think there's only one reference at section 23 where it says the local authority area will be divided into 2 or more localities. And now we had quite a long debate about this at committee, and it was reassuring to hear from the Cabinet Secretary that he was going to bring forward statutory guidance on this matter. But I did think, as many others have thought, that given that is where the success of or failure of the bill is to be determined, it was somewhat surprising that there wasn't more about it on the face of the bill. I actually mentioned this at Stage 1, and in mentioning it, I also said I would like it to be included in negotiations on the GP contract, because obviously the fact that GPs weren't involved sufficiently in community health partnerships was one of the fundamental reasons why they failed, for which I must take responsibility, although it's partly because of that experience that I'm saying more should be on the face of the bill, because community health partnerships didn't turn out exactly as I had envisaged them in terms of the locality arrangements. So I hope it will be different this time. And I think I have read in the last few weeks that something was incorporated into the renegotiated Scottish GP contract about GP's role in the integration locality arrangement. So if the Cabinet Secretary can say something about that in his wind-up, that would be appreciated. Of course, it's not just GPs, because secondary care clinicians, of course, have to be involved on the ground as well, because this is about integration that should be vertical as well as horizontal. And of course, the third sector, including disability organisations, and let's remember that they have a particular contribution to make, also need to be involved on the ground. So is on the ground where this legislation will succeed or fail. But yes, it was necessary, and we are all agreed that it is a step forward, and hopefully it will lead to the improvements that we all want. Final word, let's have the statutory guidance and the regulations as quickly as possible. Obviously, processes have to be gone through, but one of the issues, again, that I raised in committee about the regulations about what couldn't be handed over to the Integration Authority was a concern that I've heard, that local authorities and NHS boards will have to wait to see what they can put into the plan. So let's at least know as quickly as possible what's ruled out, and then let's leave the rest to health boards and local authorities to get on with delivery on the ground.
Many thanks. Now call on Bob Doris to be followed by Jim Hume.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I, as Deputy Convener of the Health and Sport Committee, thank all stakeholders that were involved in this process and, of course, the Scottish Government, who I think have been very willing to adapt and change the bill based on representations that have been made to them. An earlier contribution I thought was going to talk about Project Fear, but actually went on to talk about Project Care, to be fair to Mr Finlay. It was actually Project Health and Social Care is what I think I would like to stress. We've heard a lot about social care without the other side of the coin, and I think it's important to get that balance. But I do think there is a meeting of minds right across all the political parties in relation to this, and of political will. And I'm minded what Malcolm Chisholm said about what's actually going to happen on the coalface, and hopefully have time to come back to speak about that. So this bill actually is not the change. This bill, or act shortly, is to facilitate change. This is not the change in itself. The change will be the end to, for example, cost shunting at a local level with the development of single budgets. So the bed blocking situations, perhaps for financial reasons, no longer taking place. For example, the change will be the strategic commissioning or indeed co-production of integrated services. That will be the change. The change will be the building on existing best practice, but also, just as importantly, redesigning services in every local area in a way that improves the health and social care outcomes of the people that we all represent. Some of that is happening right now in relation to the Change Fund, for example, for older people. 300 million over around 4 years to promote such change, and importantly, only to be spent if agreed by both councils and health boards. So they can do it, and they do it when they're instructed to carry it out. And I'm sure there's a will to go further, as well as the statutory basis that this bill will include. Significantly as well, the Change Fund, of course, sign off by the third sector, and I think that's important to put on record as well. So with the statutory underpinning of health and social care integration, a far larger budget, a single budget, comes into play in terms of that whole innovative service redesign right across health and social care. And whilst the third sector clearly is a non-statutory body, won't have sign-off over that larger budget, at a local level, I expect them to be directly involved in co-production and, where appropriate, co-commissioning of services and looking at new ways of service delivery right across Scotland. Likewise, I expect our communities to have a direct say to what they expect services to look like, and expect other stakeholder professionals, whether it's allied health professionals or our GPs, to have a strong say as well. Because of that, it's actually because a bit oxymoronic, some of the points that the BMA have said, because as soon as we start dictating what a local plan is going to look like, it's not truly a local plan, and there has to be that degree of flexibility to allow the new body corporates that are coming online and all the stakeholders at a local and strategic level to have their say without presenting a fait accompli on the ground locally. That wouldn't serve anyone's interests at all. I think I'll just finish by, as I think Ms MacLeod did, was mention a good local project as an example of the kind of good work we want to see, and that's the Good Morning project in Glasgow. I know the Cabinet Secretary has been to visit them, where people who are older get a daily telephone call from a volunteer caller, just to make sure they're okay, make sure they're not lonely, make sure there's no health needs that are going unmet. A daily call, a friend on the phone, they call it. And I have no doubt that kind of innovative service keeps older people safe, secure, happy and content in their own homes for longer, rather than presenting elsewhere, which is a poorer outcome for them and also more expensive. So that's the kind of thing I want to see on the ground right across the country locally with health and social care integration. Presiding Officer.
Thank you. Now call on Jim Hume, after which move the closing speeches.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. Liberal Democrats have long called for the delivery of a common-sense approach of having health boards, local authorities and the third sector working more closely together to provide more joined-up care and better outcomes for patients. All sectors agree that the integration of health and social care is a needed move in the right direction to achieve integrated, person-centred care. We know that the incidence of emergency admissions has increased in the last few years, with the largest increase coming from the over 75 age group. This has contributed to a 7% increase between June 2012 and June 2013 in the number of bed days occupied by delayed discharge patients. An ageing population and the increasing incidence of patients presenting with multiple conditions will make these figures inevitable, and they exist in a climate when staffed beds in the NHS have reduced dramatically in the past 6 years, making the problem of an ageing population and bed blocking all the more acute for the NHS. Geriatric beds have dropped once again from 7,500 in 2012 to 7,229 in 2013, and that's down from over 9,000 in 2007. So geriatric staff beds are at their lowest level in a 10-year period, whilst emergency admissions for older people is at its highest. And with the government failing to meet the national indicator to reduce emergency admissions to hospital, combined with an Audit Scotland report finding that at least 90% of patients experience a delay of more than 3 days were aged 65 and over, it's against this backdrop of pressures and challenges being faced by the NHS that makes integration necessary. In supporting the bill at stage 1, Liberal Democrats had some concerns that we felt needed further attention. It's critical that proper engagement is entered into with the NHS, local authorities and the third sector so that a truly integrated pathway delivers for the patient. Health and social care partnerships must work with GPs, carers, the voluntary and independent sector within a locality planning framework. And regarding GPs as part of the process, GPs talk about the fact that they very much welcome the legislation, but that, worryingly, they still are unclear about what it means for them on the ground day to day. So we do need to involve and engage GPs in the new integrated arrangements. One of the reasons that community health partnerships had not been as successful was because GPs were not being engaged. Glasgow City Council stated that, and I quote, "Without effective GP engagement, attempts to keep people in the community as opposed to within a hospital setting will be hindered. It cannot be stressed enough that the inclusion of GPs within the legislation is vital if the overall objectives of the bill are to be achieved." Unquote. The proportion of the NHS budget going to general practice has fallen from 9.47% in 04-05 to 7.78% in 2011-12. So if GPs are going to play a more central role in a person's care by engaging with the new health and social care framework, then the government, of course, needs to acknowledge the demands upon their time with the backdrop of constricting budgets. The legislation will mean nothing if it can't be tailored to best fit the needs of the local population, using the knowledge of the health and social care professionals working in those communities. Indeed, COSLA has argued that the bill is at times too prescriptive and detailed, and that there should be more flexibility at a local level to determine the shape and governance of the proposed partnership arrangements. Hence my earlier concerns re ministerial powers versus local accountability. And I'm glad in the Minister's opening remarks that he stated that this job has not finished, it's still to continue, and with that said, we shall be supporting the bill today.
Many thanks. And we now move to the closing speeches, and I call on Cameron Buchanan, 4 minutes, please.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. I'm pleased to contribute to this afternoon's Stage 3 debate and to support the Public Bodies Joint Working Bill, which, perhaps not a sexy title, is about removing barriers to better working between our public bodies. And given its potential it holds for improved and more efficient services, this is indeed a welcome move by the Scottish Government. However, I find it is a bill of two halves. If I may address the latter half first, Part 2 onwards largely concerns barriers to existing working. There are already moves towards the joint commissioning of facilities, for example through the hub initiatives and large-scale procurement through National Services Scotland. But ambition here has been restricted in scope or blocked altogether due to the limitations of existing legislation. Here the bill is straightforward and adopts a common-sense approach by removing such restrictions in future. Part 1, however, is another matter entirely in that it is designed to deliver the momentum towards integrated working as well as a statutory basis to facilitate it, which is far more complex and ambitious proposition. And as the Cabinet Secretary and my colleague Nanette Milne have pointed out, this bill provides a framework and an initial push. However, it is widely accepted there is also a need for a culture change. Already there are local authorities and health boards that are well down the road towards integration, including NHS Lothian, City of Edinburgh, West Lothian and Mid Lothian councils in my own region. However, elsewhere the picture I think is very different, and the government will have to maintain pressure in this area if we are to see some change and overcome the resistance to this, which there undoubtedly is. It was borne out by the evidence of the likes of Professor Alison Petch to the Health Committee, who warned of the ignorance that existed between different professional groups on one another's working. Indeed, with so much of the detail still to be consulted on and confirmed, particularly on areas around financial accountability and conflict resolution, the government must ensure that none of the momentum is lost in later stages and press local authorities and health boards to commit to the integration process and beyond that begin their strategic planning. Presiding Officer, even assuming that there is that vital impetus and the bill achieves better integration between health and social work, we already have evidence that this will not be in itself enough. I've quickly learned that with every new bill or subject in the Scottish Parliament, there's a complete set of new buzzwords and accompanying jargon. With the public bodies will we have disconnects, and as this bill highlighted, the key disconnect of coordination between health and social care agencies. However, as the Glasgow City Council pointed out in its evidence to the Health Committee, there is much of a problem with coordination and working between primary health care professionals and those in acute care, i.e. within the health profession. This is an area in which the bill does not directly address, but which is also vital to deliver the type of change we are looking for. Working within agencies is an important matter, as is the working between agencies, particularly if we are to achieve the reduction in spending on hospital visits and the focus more on community-based care. Deputy Presiding Officer, there has been a good deal of comment from, amongst others, Malcolm Chisholm, on how demographic changes, and in particular the challenges of an ageing population, make this bill necessary. I think we are all agreed that we must be smarter in our public spending, and a coordinated focus on preventative spending is central to that. However, this bill is, as I have outlined, if we are to deliver a genuinely integrated, joined-up and person-centred approach, then this must be the start of the process, not the end. The real test of this legislation will be in the experience of those who use and have the experience of our health and social care services. The overreaching goal must be for improved delivery, fewer delays, reduced waiting times and fewer non-scheduled hospital admissions. These are the standards by which this reform bill will be judged, and today's legislation, though welcome, is just one step towards achieving them. We shall, however, be supporting this bill.
Many thanks. Now call on Rhoda Grant, 6 minutes or thereby, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I start by thanking all those stakeholders who give evidence to the committee when we're scrutinising the bill, and also thank the committee clerks and support staff for their assistance, and SPICE, who also helped us very much. And I think a special thanks to the legislation team who helped us all draft amendments for the bill, I think without which we would have been even in a more difficult situation today trying to bring forward our own amendments. So can I thank all those people who made it possible to do this. We in the Labour Party support the general principles of the bill. We want to see a seamless service for users, and they have to be at the heart of this service, planning their own care to fit their needs and to fit their life chances. Malcolm, and I agree with what Malcolm Chisholm said about the bill being necessary but insufficient to make the change we need. We need to go much further to properly integrate health and social care. And therefore, I agree with the Cabinet Secretary that there is much unfinished business around integrating health and social care. And his catchphrase that he used all the time was that we were on the same page as we were going through the process of the bill. Well, some of us would have hoped that the script on that page might have been a little bolder, but we will continue to push for a bolder vision of the integration of health and social care. We do need a change of culture, and Nanette Milne mentioned that in her speech today, but it was something that ran through the whole debate. The culture needs to change, and you can't legislate for that. We have to embrace co-production. This bill has improved that to an extent, but we have a huge distance to go to make sure that the person is at the very centre of care, that they are at the heart of the legislation and how we deliver care. We provide services to allow people to go out and live their lives. Therefore, we cannot dictate to them how they do that. They need to be in the centre of that. And that's where the culture change comes, recognising that their needs are much more than the needs of the organisations and indeed the people that deliver the care. And we've all heard stories of people being told what they can and cannot eat, what time they need to eat. We've also heard stories about people being told when they have to get out of their bed and indeed when they have to get into their beds. And I've certainly seen heartbreaking stories where parents are not even allowed to sit up with their teenage children of an evening because they have to go to bed long before they would put their children to bed. How can they parent children under those circumstances? We need to look at how we deliver this to make sure that the needs of service users, their carers and families are met and that their ambitions are met. Neil Findlay talked about the Unison survey, and I've actually read that, and it makes really stark reading about what the people delivering those care services feel. They're underpaid, they're undervalued, and they're not given enough time to care. They see what needs to be done, but they aren't given the time to deliver that. We need to involve and value all workers that deliver care, and a lot of people have talked about GPs. I think Jim Hume and Malcolm Chisholm did, the third sector, those who represent service users, but also those who are care providers. I think Bob Dorr mentioned AHPs. All of those are crucial, but we have to remember that they are involved in delivering care, and we need to respect their views and pay them accordingly. Care should not be a Cinderella service. If we really value the people we're caring for, we need to make sure we also value the people delivering that care. As I said, I agree with the Cabinet Secretary that there is much unfinished business. Inspection is one of those. The inspection landscape is very cluttered with different regimes for health and social care, and we need that to be integrated. And we would recommend a new body that is independent, is both available to staff and patients, because I think it's important that we have protection for whistleblowers. Many of the complaints that have come forward about how care is delivered has come from staff who are working for inadequate providers. They need to be able to raise their concerns. And that inspection regime needs teeth. They need to be able to take steps to right the wrongs, and it also needs to be transparent. And one of the big challenges we've learnt of while looking at this bill is inspection of home care. How do you get into somebody's home to inspect the care that they are receiving, especially when they are so dependent on the person that is delivering that care to them? So we need to look at all those things and see how we can tighten up this service. We have heard today about, Neil Findlay mentioned social care in crisis and the number of care homes that are out of commission due to poor standards. Surely we should be finding out about that sooner, that steps should be taken sooner to maybe try and bring those up to standards, because now we see bed blocking increasing. People are not receiving the care appropriate to their needs because it's not there in the community. So we need to look at how we improve the standards throughout the whole care sector. We all understand the shift in the balance of care from acute hospitals into communities is what we desire. It keeps people out of hospital, it keeps them independent, it keeps them enabled. It's what we would want in that situation. And it's also more cost effective. But we can't shift the balance of care out of acute care altogether. And I think it was Neil Findlay that raised concerns about the savings highlighted in the Christie Commission and how we can possibly achieve them. People will still need acute care, and that has to be delivered in hospital settings. But if we want to keep people well for longer, we also have to provide quality care in the community. And that also needs to deal with multiple issues that as people live longer, they have more conditions that need to be dealt with, and we need all workers working towards that. Presiding Officer, in conclusion, the integration of health and social care is really necessary, and hopefully this bill will start the process. Legislation won't change everything and it won't change the culture, but we need to take the lead and change the culture in this, and I hope this bill helps us to do that.
Thank you, Ms Grant. We now move to Alec Neil to wind up the debate. Cabinet Secretary, I would appreciate if you would continue until 5:20.
Thank you very much indeed, Presiding Officer. I shall do my best to continue to 5:20. Can I say I'll try, first of all, and respond to a number of the very important points made by members from all sides of the chamber in terms of this bill. Can I first of all say, just in terms of moving ahead from here, once we get the royal assent, where do we go from here? Well, obviously, the next step is to move towards the secondary legislation and to the regulations and guidance. And I'm very keen to do that as soon as possible, because clearly we want these integration boards to be fully operational from April 2015. But it's also very important to continue the process that we've done throughout this exercise of taking the key stakeholders with us. And we have agreement from the members and the stakeholder groups in the Bill Advisory Group, who have been advising the government on the bill as well throughout the entire process, that they will continue and advise the government on discussions about secondary legislation, about regulations and guidance and all the rest of it. And I think by continuing with that group and continuing with the stakeholders, that is the right way to proceed, because the more consensus we get, the more buy-in we get right through the process, then the more success we'll have in implementing the provisions of the legislation. Secondly, in terms of GP involvement, I couldn't agree more that the GPs have an absolutely vital role to play. Indeed, the entire primary care sector has a vital role to play, although I should say I would expect consultants from the hospitals to be playing much more of a role in the community as well. But I do agree about the importance of GP involvement, particularly in the localities as well as in the partnership itself. Now, having said that, I should also emphasise to the Chamber something that people probably already know, and that is that in the guidance I've issued for local delivery plans being submitted by boards to the Scottish Government for approval, I have stated very clearly that I expect every local delivery plan from every health board in Scotland to show a significant increase in spend in the primary care sector from April 2014 onwards. Now, that doesn't mean a cut in acute services, because there is a real increase in every board's budget going forward. And that means that a bigger share of the growth should be allocated to primary care services to allow us to increase the resources available to primary care, while simultaneously ensuring that there are not cuts in the acute services, which are, as Rhoda Grant said, absolutely essential as well.
Rhoda Grant.
Cabinet Secretary.
Can we have Ms Grant's microphone on, please?
Cabinet Secretary will be aware that one of the major growth areas in Health Board budgets is medicines and the cost of medicines. Sometimes one person told me that that is now ahead of staff costs in healthcare budgets. Will he factor that in when he's looking at increases to their budgets?
Well, of course, the prescriptions budget is, as far as I'm concerned, part or separate from. We account for that separately from the budget for primary care services, although it is paid through the primary care. Much of it is through primary care. For example, if you look at the accounts that we present to Parliament, we specifically have a line item on the cost of prescriptions, which is running at roughly £1.3 billion a year. So when I'm talking about additional spend in the primary care sector, I'm not talking about the prescription element of it, I'm talking about the services element of it, and that includes obviously primarily GP services, because there's no doubt in my mind at all, for us to achieve our health outcomes, including a reduction in the unnecessary admission of people to hospital, then we have got to clearly improve and expand primary care services as part of the integration process, and those primary care services have to be absolutely integral to the commissioning and the strategic planning of the integrated authorities. And I agree that speed is of the essence. Can I also just agree with Malcolm Chisholm about the importance of involving disability organisations in the processes as well, because clearly, although integrated services are for the entire adult population, clearly the main users of these services are older people and disabled people, and very clearly they need to be involved, and their stakeholder groups need to be involved in discussions both at national level as well as at local level as well. Can I also say that the cultural issues which have been referred to by a number of members is also very important. I believe actually the bill itself will be a major tool in changing the culture, and particularly changing the culture from one of delivering to people services, but rather delivering with people and delivering for people in agreement with them and having them involved in design and delivery of services. And I think the role of users and user groups in the design and delivery of services is critically important as well. And again, particularly at locality level, that will be an essential prerequisite, I think, to success. Some of the other points that have been made, can I also just emphasise that while this bill is very largely about the financial and organisational arrangements for integration, we should never lose sight that the purpose of the bill is to improve dramatically service provision for the people who use these services. And it's not just about delayed discharges. I do believe that the experience shows that where you have integration, then the problem of delayed discharges is much easier to deal with, and over time we can eliminate delayed discharges, as has largely been done, for example, in West Lothian. But it's also, for example, about making sure that people can be treated much more, both in terms of their health care and social care, in the community, at home or in a homely setting, or at a homely setting in the community. And that is an absolutely key element in improving the health outcomes of the population.
The Minister spoke at length today, and I've yet to hear him mention anything about the two fundamental problems that we have: the poor pay and conditions of the staff delivering the care and the time-limited appointments made to deal with clients. I've yet to hear him mention.
Well, in the latter point, there's already 2 or 3 investigations going into issues in terms of the outcomes from social care, looking at the time element as part of that, and the members should know that, because the Association of Social Work Directors and the Care Inspectorate are looking specifically at these issues. I did say earlier that I do think the issue of terms and conditions in the social care sector is an issue that needs to be addressed, and we need to do that with our local authority colleagues. But I do have to say, think it's a bit rich for Neil Findlay of the Labour Party to be complaining about how the workers are treated, when we've seen what's happened in Glasgow City Council, where the workers have been treated with total contempt by the Labour administration, so much so they've been forced into industrial action. So I don't think we'll be taking any lessons from Mr Findlay or any of his colleagues on how to treat workers. And I won't mention Aberdeen, where there's been a disastrous move, described by some people as a disastrous move, in transferring services to an Alio Bonaccord Care, which is hardly perhaps the model that we would all want to see. And certainly, again, I don't think we'll be taking any lessons from the Labour administration in Aberdeen or the Labour spokesperson on how you treat your workers or how you treat service users.
Can you bring your remarks to a close, Cabinet Secretary?
Can I finally say, Presiding Officer, the passage of this legislation, which, with the exception of Neil Findlay, has been done on a consensual basis, I think is a significant landmark in both health and social care in Scotland, and I believe its passage tonight will do a great deal to improve both health care and social care in Scotland, and I hope every member will vote for it.
That concludes the debate on the Public Bodies Joint Work in Scotland Bill. We now move to the next item of business, which is decision time. The first question is that motion number 9105, in the name of Joe Fitzpatrick, on committee membership, be agreed to. Are we all agreed? The motion is therefore agreed to. The next question is that motion number 9115, in the name of Alex Neil, on the Public Bodies Joint Working Scotland Bill, be agreed to. Are we all agreed? The motion is therefore agreed to, and the Public Bodies Joint Working Scotland Bill is passed. That concludes decision time. We now move to members' business. Members who are leaving the chamber should do so quickly and quietly.